Everyone stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. We have a full agenda tonight, so let's get things going. The first thing is to approve the agenda. Does anyone on the council have any questions, issues on today's agenda?
I'll second.
Okay, I got a motion by Sean Ryan, second by Maggie Bass, to accept the agenda as in front of us here. If there's no other comments, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, the agenda is approved 5-0. First, Mike.
Mayor, do you want to explain just real briefly that I think we have a number of new attendees in the audience, how you intend to address kind of the opportunity for anybody that's not on the agenda, how they can.
Okay. Yes, for the people who came, who want to speak, what we do here is we're going to go through the agenda items, and there's 10 of them, and then actually 11 of them. They should go fairly quick, and then when we get to the miscellaneous section, I will open the floor up for comments, and when we do that, we would like everyone to come to the podium who would like to speak. Twofold, so that we can get you on the camera. We'd also like you to state your name and address so we have a record on file for our minutes who spoke, and a little issue on, or whatever issue they would like to speak on. So that's the format, so be patient with us. We will get this thing moving, and hopefully it shouldn't take too long. So thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. We have with us tonight Miss Michelle Clark. Michelle, will come to the podium. We've been working with the Southwest Minnesota Housing Partnership. Is this loud enough? Is this picking up?
Yep, you're picking up.
Just want to make sure that tonight we have a number of documents to go through as it relates to our downtown small cities commercial rehabilitation and residential rental rehabilitation program. We were fortunate at the end of June to get a grant for nearly $296,000 from the state of Minnesota, coupled with the rework and the reuse of funds that we had sitting in city accounts, totaling about $476,000. Those have been directed to this program, along with additional contributions from any of the commercial, residential, and residential rehab parties that would participate. So we're looking at a project in the vicinity of right around $1 million for this entire project. The reason we have Michelle in tonight is to go through some of these. For those that were here August of last year, we adopted all these similar documents in 2016, and we're not going to go through them in painstaking fashion. We're going to try to just hit kind of the highlights so that you have some idea of why we're having to adopt them, or to refresh your memory in case you don't specifically recall. The scope of the whole project, just though to briefly talk about, as I indicated, that the $296,000 state grant, $476 of our former Minnesota Investment Fund, along with property owner matching funds totaling $249,000, will ultimately provide for a project of about $1,020,000. What we hope to do in that project is to do rental rehab on about 20 single-family owner-occupied houses, 5 residential rental properties, and about 8 commercial properties. This project is on the backside of what we adopted last year, which is our 2016 project. That was about $300,000 in funds that we had received from the repayment of a grant. And in that project, which we're currently involved in, is 6 commercial rehab and 4 commercial rental rehab properties. So that's kind of the scope and overview of the 2 projects. If you combine both of them together, we're at about $1.4 million when and if we get done through all of those projects. And so Michelle is here. Last year we had Chelsea Alger. Michelle wasn't able to make it. But Michelle, as the program and lending manager from the Housing Partnership, is our primary contact person that we use in the grant administration of this program. And one of the last items you'll have in here is the contract with them to perform the grant administration on this project. If we were to try to do it as city staff, we wouldn't have been able to undertake either the 16 or 17. And so the contract has been with the Housing Partnership to do all of the grant administration. So I'm going to let Michelle walk you through what we have in front of you on the screen. In the dark area is the current 2016 commercial rental target area for 2016. And the expanded dotted boundaries delineate what's involved in the 2017 project for the residential rehab, and then we're still continuing to use the same commercial target area in 17 as we are currently using for 2016. So with that, I will pass it over to Michelle and let her walk through, trying to hit again most of the highlights of these, but to answer any questions that you might have as we go through it. So please feel free to ask any questions. There are no dumb questions. There's a lot of paperwork involved in doing this. If anybody tells you that when you get grant funds from the state, it's free money, there's another shortcoming that there's a lot of paperwork that goes with these projects. So with that, Michelle, I'll let you handle it.
Wonderful, thank you. So my name is Michelle Clark. I'm the Program and Lending Manager with Southwest Minnesota Housing Partnership. I am currently the one in charge of doing your 2016 award here, which is that black line in there for the commercial and rental target area. That map actually is incorrect. It should say owner occupied and rental target area is the dotted line. So we'll make sure we get that correct here before it goes out to the public as well. The first thing in your packet is the actual state grant contract. This is from the state of Minnesota. It is the binding contract between the City of New Prague and the State of Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development that states on page 2 the budget of what you guys were awarded and what dollar amounts are going to go into the grant. As Mike mentioned, there is 20 residential owner rehabs. There is 5 rental rehabs that are for single-family dwellings, and 8 commercial rehabs to piggyback off the 2016. And then the administration line item is in there as well for us to do our portion of the contract that will come up at the end. Is there any questions on that document?
City Attorney has reviewed.
Okay. The next policy in your package should be the certification of a drug-free workplace. This was actually adopted last year for the 2016. However, now that we do have a grant agreement number, they would like it to be readopted with that grant number on there, which is the second line, the CDAP number. It's the same policy that you have in place, and it's a state policy regardless, so you're following it anyway. The next should be the fair housing policy. And that was actually adopted last year as well. When I submitted it to the state for review to be carried over for this one, the deed actually found a typo in their template. Under number 2 on the back, on the second page, it had the words for deed, which is the Department of Employment and Economic Development, and HUD. So wording was commingled on the last one, so we're just readopting it with the correct language. The next one should be the income reuse plan. You would have had something called a program income plan last time, which is what you were actually following to put into place the 2016 program that you have. This is just a little bit more generic. It allows the city, when some of the funds are repaid, that you can actually access the funds to use any eligible expense, not just similar activities as with the previous one. So going forward, when the commercial units are repaid, part of that is a repayment, and if anything would be paid off early and not forgiven, then the city can use it for any eligible small cities expense and not just what it was used for originally. The next comes in a very thick packet. This would be our procedural guidelines for the residential owner occupied portion. Now this is new. You did not have this included in your 2016 program. And what it is that any program or any person within that target area that owns a home and lives in it as their primary residence would be able to apply for the rehab funds. The eligibility items, some of the high points are you have to own your home, you have to be current on your first mortgage if you do have a mortgage, you have to be current on your real estate taxes, and you have to be at 80% or below of the area median income as set forth by whatever county they're in, since we have a split county here in New Prague. Some of the high points of the program, some of the eligible expenses, I would say our number one are roofs, windows, doors, insulation, electrical, plumbing, ADA accessibility are all eligible items, and those are probably the ones that we hit with every project. Most of them will hit one of those things that I listed. There are other eligible expenses, however, I don't want to take up all of your night. So that would be, the next thing in there is what's called the fact sheet. Now this is something that will actually, I will present when I come back to do the community meetings and present to your residents. And this actually goes out with all of the application packets. So what it is the high points of the eligibility. How do you get it? What do you have to do to fit into the program or to be eligible for the program? So as you read through it, you see the ownership, the target area, the eligible repairs are in there. They have to maintain homeowners insurance and be that 80%, which is also listed in there for each county. Any questions? I know I'm going really fast. Okay. The next in there.
Michelle, maybe one
Yeah.
part on that for the council's
Yeah.
benefit
Yeah.
is what funding is provided to single-family homeowners
Yeah.
on this part.
So the program is broken up in what we call a 70-30 basis. So what it is 70% of their total rehab will come from the small cities funds. The other 30% is what we call owner match. Now that owner match can come in various sources, but we do like to see, or the state likes to see, them have some skin in the game. So whether they take out another loan, whether they get a loan or a grant or something from another outside source, whether it be your community action agency, or we do have other matching funds at the housing partnership. Weatherization is another source of that, or they can get it from their parents, they can get it from grandma, they can get it from their rich neighbor, whatever. It doesn't matter how they get it as long as they come to the table with that 30%. And so it will be broken up. The 70% is actually set up for a 0% deferred forgivable loan. That means that it is 0%, so no interest will accrue, and it is forgivable at 10% each year from the date they sign the repayment agreement for 10 years. So 10% each year is forgiven, and after that 10 years it reverts to a grant, and then they will owe nothing. Okay. The next packet is the residential rental rehab program. Now, this pretty much mirrors the owner-occupied because it is for single-family dwellings. The biggest difference is that it has to be occupied by a renter or a tenant. And if you turn to page 10, they follow the same income. However, with a rental situation, they do have to follow the fair market rents as set forth by your local agency. And as you can see on page 10, the policies, as well as will be in the fact sheet, the fair market rents for the Seward County or Scott County, depending on what side of the county line they lay on. And then it goes through in the fact sheet as well, the utility allowances and things like that to make sure that they maintain affordability, because we do want to make sure that this is an affordable housing situation.
Do we have to stick with the county? I mean, because we're in a unique situation with the split county. I mean, the differences between those eligible incomes are quite different.
Quite different on the rents as well.
Just by being on the other side of the street.
Unfortunately, no, we have to stick with the counties as
Even though it's state money, it's not county
Correct.
money. Okay.
Correct, yep.
There's no way
That's in the
to petition
regulation
that,
from the state, that it follows the county fair market rents. The next piece of that is that the fact sheet, there is a typo on that, I apologize for that. I will get it fixed here before it goes out to the public. The fact sheet, like I said, it lays it out very similar to the owner occupied. It just goes through those income limits. It talks about the fair market rents and how to calculate that. And then also part of this, which I don't see is in here, is we will attach the utility allowances for each county as well. That will be attached to the fact sheet, so those landlords do know how to calculate that. And if they don't, I walk people through it all the time and come up with their calculations. We actually have a worksheet that we can provide to them to do that. And the split, the 70-30 split is the same for rental, so it's 70%, it's a 0% deferred forgivable loan. The only difference is, I believe, instead of the 10 years, it's 5 years on the rental side, and so it's 20% each year is forgiven for 5 years. And the income guidelines go off of the tenant living in the rental, not the owner of the rental. So those are the biggest differences. The next is the commercial rehab program procedural guidelines. Now this is exactly the same as you did for your 2016 program, but since this is a new award and the funding sources for this is broken up just a little bit differently than the 2016, we are going to readopt the 2017. And as I stated, it is exactly the same as your 2016 that you approved last year. Behind that is the fact sheet. The only difference is the dollar amount and that we can do 8 commercial projects with this allocation versus the original one.
Michelle, before you go on, explain that in case anybody isn't aware of it or is watching on TV for the first time, the amount split and how that works.
Sure. So the commercial is set up as an 80-20 split instead of a 70-30. That 80% is actually can go up to a max of $40,000. However, the average loan to a commercial unit right now is about $27,000 with the new program. And that 80% is broken up. 40% is a 0% deferred forgivable loan for the 5 years. So 20% each year of 40% will be forgiven. The other 40% is actually a low interest loan at 2% is what it was set at in the application. And that would be payable monthly to the city, and it would be over a 10-year period to allow them for reduced payment amounts. Now, we do have where they can pay that off at any time without any penalty. So if they do have that other 40%, they can actually bring it to the table. The repayment agreement is still done with the 40-40 split. However, they pay it off right away, and Patty is well aware of how to take care of that. Do you have any questions on those? I know that was fairly fast. Okay, the next is the contract with the housing partnership. Now this is very similar to the contract that you have with us currently to put into place your 2016 program. The biggest difference is the date will go in as of when we get that signed grant agreement back from the state of Minnesota fully executed, just because we can't enter into a contract until you have the money, and you don't have the money until that fully executed contract comes back from the state. So that date will be filled in as when Mike receives that. And then number 1, under the terms, the state, since HUD has set back their allocations so far this year, and since we were just awarded those funds, they're actually giving the city an additional 9 months to fulfill their goals. So typically we would see the programs end on December 31st. This one, they're actually granting us until September 30th of the following year. So it'll be September 30th of 2020. We have to spend all of the state funds. On the very back of the very last page of that contract is the budget split up. It does mirror the grant agreement. The biggest difference is the total other funds are broken out into 2 categories. And the reason I did this is that the MIF funds column is what the city's actually pledging of your own money. And I do that so the city gets that recognition. So when and if any of your residents or property owners would question, did the city do anything for this? Yes, they have. They've matched this $476,100 to help their residents and property owners. The next is just a simple form. It's an authorization form. It's really a formality because once you approve our contract, you're approving this. However, when the state comes out to monitor, they like to just see this 1 page instead of all 12 pages. What it is that you guys are going to approve that I can approve each applicant as per your program procedural guidelines, which are the ones that we just went through, and that I can sign the reimbursement request as the grantee's authorized signature. What it is we fill out a form that we have to actually submit to the state that I've gone over with Patty in detail, and will again as soon as we get the new one. I sign it, I send it to Patty, and Patty then knows when the state's depositing the money to be able to send the funds to us so we can disseminate it out to all of the contractors that are requesting payment per your procedural guidelines. Okay? And the last should just be the copy of the map that's up, and this one doesn't have the typo on it, so that's good. So yours should be good. Any questions? I know I went through that really quickly to save time. I'm always available by phone or email if you guys would think of any questions after the fact. once we get this all put into place, we'll be able to, we're actually planning the dates for the community meetings. They will come back. We will hold each different activity, an hour-long community meeting. And I'll be there to answer all of the questions for all of your residents and property owners.
We're trying to look at that for somewhere out between November 2nd and 9th, kind of the first part of November. We'll get that out on our website, out in the newspaper, on the radio, and post some flyers around town.
So what's the timing? We approve everything tonight. Is it, when should we have all the funds and all that?
The funds actually come from the state on a reimbursement basis.
Okay.
So after the work is completed and we go out and do the inspection and make sure that the contractors have followed all of the procedures in their contract, and make sure all of the work was completed as they state, then we actually can request that money from the state every 2 weeks. It follows a state draw calendar, which I've provided to Patty, and then it takes about a week and a half to get the money to here, and then then Patty has to send it to me, and then we disseminate it to the contractors after we receive the lien waivers and all of the signed documents that they have to follow the state requirements.
But we have the MIF funds. Is it something that we're going to use the MIF funds first and then?
Yeah. As it's laid out, some of the activities have MIF funds and some do not. So yes, if MIF is allocated to a specific activity, yes, we will use that first, and we will draw it just as we're doing with the program income money that we're doing with the 2016.
We sent, based on your action at the last meeting, we sent a request to the state to be able to legally move our MIF funds over into our SCDP program, and so we're waiting for that approval as well. So we basically have to finish up all of the paperwork, we have to get the authorizations, get documents prepared for those meetings with residential property owners, residential rehab, and commercial rehab for the first week or so in November approximately.
Okay. Any other questions?
No. No, I know.
So Mike, can we approve all these as one big swoosh?
Yeah, she has one more.
I just gotta grab it.
That we're supposed to ensure that it gets in the minutes and that we read it.
This is government funding to rehabilitate commercial and residential buildings on Main Street.
That, in taking a look at it, the answer to your question is
Yeah, I'm
that
looking at it, looks like it's all kind of in around Main Street.
the commercial buildings, yes, are on the area on either side of Main Street for the most part. The residential rehab and the residential rental rehab can occur anywhere within the dotted lines of the project area. We went out and solicited information, Ken, last fall, trying to put together information to see what kind of interest might exist, and from that we developed an application that we've submitted to the state, and it went through a competitive process. And like I said, at the end of June, we were awarded $295,550 under the state Small Cities Development Program. Coupled with that is funds that the city received a number of years ago, and for whatever reasons either weren't used or weren't able to be used, but were grant funds from the state, which are called our Minnesota Investment Fund monies. We asked because they haven't been used in the last 15 years, and instead of continuing having to sit on our books, we worked with both the ED and the council to take a look at moving, with the state's permission, to move those dollars into this program. And then along with the owner contributions, which were total about $249,000, we would attempt to undertake the 20 single family, 5 rental rehab, and 8 commercial rehab in the areas that you see on the map.
Is this in exchange for some sort of service we're providing as a city of the state?
No.
We're not enhancing low-income housing availability or anything like that?
This is for existing owner-occupied housing, for owner rental rehab housing, where the renter's income would have to meet the requirements that Michelle went through, and it does vary either on the Seward County side or the Scott County side. And then finally, as we started to undertake six commercial rehab downtown, is we're looking at doing another 8 because we had more interest than what we had monies to provide under the 2016 program. So what we've done is cobble together state monies, monies that we had on hand, and participant monies from owner equity, either on the commercial or the rental side, to undertake the scope of the projects that we're talking about. And collectively, that investment in helping rehab, single-family rental rehab, and commercial will result in an investment of about, if it's all said and done, almost $1.4 million in that targeted area for the city. So it's a way to help homeowners that live in their homes that need to do some rehab, that haven't chosen to for whatever reason. We have an opportunity to try to help them now.
So the last item is that I just needed to be reflected in the minutes, that the City of New Prague, through the Small Cities Development Program, will, to the greatest extent feasible, market to low and very low income persons or businesses and female and minority owned contractors. By saying that is that we want to make sure that all of the contractors out there in your community know that if they are either a women or minority owned business or what they consider what's called a Section 3 business, so low or moderate income contractor, we do want them to apply to work on these to help boost their economy as well.
Okay.
That's all I have. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for the speed of the...
I do this a lot.
I do have one question
Yes.
though. I know, and I just can't remember the answer because I know we've talked about it before. We have the target areas and so many is what our goal is.
Yep.
But when we have more of one area, do we wait on the funds to see if they all apply, or is it like a first come and we just see how it falls in place?
Yep, all of the funds are first come, first served basis. So what it is that we do, take applications, we number them as they come in when it's a complete and final application, so they've turned in all of the paperwork that needs to be done, and they're approved. Then they get numbered and put into order as we've done with your 2016. Now, it could be that we could do more than what our goals are. If some of the projects maybe come in less than what our average loans are, we do try and do as many until the funds are gone. If we would go through it and spend all of the money, we could go back in and do another full application to the state if the city would want, but at this time there's no plans for that. We kind of did this new grant off of the old one that had such good turnout, so it could be. If we get to the end of the grant and we may see that maybe some of the funds aren't being utilized, is that more your question? There are ways that we can transfer it through a grant adjustment notice from one activity to another. It's very rare and it can only go certain directions, and I believe from commercial to owner occupied. You can't go from owner occupied to commercial just because of the affordability and the federal objectives that we have to meet to be eligible to spend this money.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions? No? I guess if not, I'll look for a motion to approve all the documentation and the policies that are required to accept this grant.
So moved to approve resolution and items A through M,
And plus the statement,
and
right?
plus the statement.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Second.
I got a motion by Amy Jurek, second by Dave Brusick. Any other comments? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, passes 5-0. Thank
Thank
you
you for your
very
time.
much. Next, Patty, are you taking this one?
I am.
Awesome. Thanks for coming. Nice seeing you again.
I'm here to give you some information on our 2018 health insurance renewal. The city currently participates in the Southwest West Central Service Cooperative, which utilizes Blue Cross Blue Shield administration and network. In 2017 and 18, the co-op went out to market as required by the Minnesota State Statute 471.6161. The co-op decided to remain with Blue Cross Blue Shield. With that decision came changes as to the way the co-op would handle renewals. All 7 Minnesota co-ops will be pooled as one under one stop-loss contract, thus separating employers by size. This change resulted in smaller groups receiving the larger increases. The city received a renewal increase of 29%, or $209,000 for 2018. Our broker CBIZ requested proposals and received 4 bids from Blue Cross Blue Shield Direct, Medica, Health Partners, and Peak. Health Partners came in with one of the lowest bids and very comparable to the Blue Cross Blue Shield plan we currently have. They were able to quote our 2018 health insurance at an increase of 0.3%, with the second year not to exceed 15% increase guaranteed for 2019. We have with us today our broker partner, Vicki Walsh from CBIZ, who's going to come up and answer any questions that you might have pertaining in depth more into the co-op, rate increases, some of the bids that we may have received, any deviations to our current plan.
So basically, the plan design itself is the same for the same deductibles, the same out-of-pocket maximums. There are some internal deviations, the largest piece being in the pharmacy section of that. There will be a formulary change, a change to the formulary drug list, and then some over-the-counter medications will not be covered that are currently covered. I think that is the biggest change to the plan, but the rates are the network in-networks, the deductible will remain the same, the provider network that you're able to utilize will remain the same.
Okay, do we know what the impact of that change of the formulary and drugs?
We don't, but once approved, we can order that report and we will know who is impacted. Each person will have the ability to transition for the first 3 months. So you can get your prescription filled like month 1 and 2, and then you'll receive a letter and it would state you need to change to one of these, or if you need to make an exception, you can do that as well.
Okay.
So with that, we saved 29%. In the current marketplace, we are seeing between 15 and 20% increases across the board. So being able to provide a proposal that was only 0.3% more than what you're paying today was actually pretty good.
Okay. Any questions?
Yeah, I guess I don't understand what CBIZ is relative to what we were in before.
CBIZ, we are your employee benefits broker, so we're independent from the cooperative. So the difference is, so we're the ones that go through and look at all the plans, make sure that they're equal, similar. In the case of the co-op, because of the large increase that you received this year, we're the ones that went to all the market to try to find you something that was similar at a lower cost. So we're not part of Blue Cross, we're just independent.
In addition to Vicki from CBIZ, Dan Knipe is here, and I think Dan and Chuck have been involved, Chuck Tooby have been involved in the local front working with CBIZ way before even I arrived about 9 years ago. So, but nobody knew. They've kind of been in the background, but we haven't had to do much of anything. But we continue with the service co-op for the last number of years.
So at this point then, accepting this, we would be done essentially with the previous
It would result in the
co-op.
city leaving the service co-op, and Vicki could go into a little bit more detail, but essentially what they did is that we've been part of the Southwest Minnesota Service Co-op for the last...
Since 2006, so 11 years?
Yes, and
Well,
so in that, this year, unlike us until we got our rate increase, is all of the service co-ops throughout the entire state of Minnesota decided to collectively go together to partner to provide insurance back to the entities that they were providing insurance. But instead of them individually in each of the co-ops, it was through a redesigned program with all of the service co-ops going together. And in that, they established different rates for employers having less than 50 employee contracts, those between 51 and 100, and those more than 100. And so we came out on kind of the short end of the stick, so to speak, at about a 29.4% increase, which, as she indicated, was in excess of $200,000. And so we asked CBIZ on our behalf to immediately go out and see what other alternatives were available, taking our current plan parameters and attempting to receive bids from the various other carriers. They included Blue Cross Blue Shield Direct, as you heard, on page 1, in addition to what the service co-op was providing. On page 2, you've got Medica, Health Partners, and then the last one is PEAK, which is the Public Employee Assistance Program. And so in trying to take a look at it, that which essentially kept the same deductibles, there's no insurance, the out-of-pockets, the preventative care, the physician services, hospital services, emergency care, as close as we could come on prescription drugs and the out-of-pocket and the monthly rates. Basically, Health Partners came in essentially at what we are currently receiving, with only 0.3% increase over what our current 2017 rates are. We attempted to ask Vicki to see in her interaction with Health Partners whether with this good move in the first year and switch, what can we get on the back end for the second year, and the best we can get is a proposal not to exceed 15%, but there's a number of outs on their behalf as you take a look at the agreement in there. It assumes that we're with them for 2 years, and basically the best we can get would be a maximum not to exceed, again dependent upon what our loss experience might be. And so as we take a look at it, that really what that cap is in a worst case situation, if we continued with them, that would be the maximum that we would see in 2019. If we have good loss experience and good trend in there, it can be below that. We just don't know what that's going to be until we're with them for a year and request proposals or request the renewal notice next fall. So I reviewed this with the city attorney, and he said that there's no significant commitment. If for some reason we didn't like what was there, we can get out of it. Worst case, we're covered at our 15%. And so if you were to look at that over 2 years, for 18 and 19, even though this year's a 0.3%, in the trend of the marketplace, that still isn't all bad. And so not knowing where our trend and loss experience might go, that's really the best that we can get on the back end for a 2-year type agreement.
Do you know if the area providers are in-network or out-of-network with Health Partners?
Yes, they're in network.
They are. Okay.
Yeah, they're in network, and the Mayo Clinic is part of the network as well.
We tried to make sure that we took a look at, what was the document we took a look at as far as?
We had a disruption report based on your top providers.
We tried to take a look at making or trying to ensure as we looked at the utilization of providers that are used by all employees, where were those and what the coverage is, and predominantly almost all of them. I think there was one exception on a chiropractor that wouldn't be a coverable entity. All of the rest were. So it didn't look like there was any major disruption of service by going with Health Partners.
Good.
Which was our major concern.
Right, that was one of our main goals.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay.
So in today's marketplace, when you take a look at what's happening out there in the insurance industry, we're sleeping a little bit better after we got this information. We were a little concerned, and if you recall, when we started trying to give you some early estimates in the budget, that we had an unknown. And I guess if you take a look at the change in insurance rates from 2013 through proposed 2018, that 5-year trend, the change in our single-family premium went up $4.72 over those 5 years. Our family rates went up $15.91, or an average of 0.2% per year over those 5 years. So if you look at that on the very last page, page 5, Patty included up at the top, after we made the conversion from 12 to 13 and change of rates, we've been extremely stable from 2013 all the way to 2018 when you look at the entire insurance package.
It's almost too good to be true, compared to what we're hearing.
That's absolutely, you're right on point.
Okay. Good. Well, thanks for the good news.
Thank you for your hard work.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Mike, do we need to approve that?
Your action will be to enter into a contract with Health Partners for the health insurance coverage for city employees and families for 2018 and 2019 calendar year.
Okay, I will make a motion as eloquently as Mike said.
I'll
Second.
I got a second by Maggie Bass. Any other questions? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Thank you very much. Thanks, Dan. Next on the agenda, Ken, are you going to, oh, Glenn, that's right. This is Glenn's show.
Good evening. What we got coming up is a little presentation put together by Nikki Farrington and Chris Gavin from SCH. Nikki is our project manager for the 2020 Highway 19 or Main Street Recon project. Chris Gavin, as you know, is representing us on this project as the city engineer. So basically, this is going to kind of go through what we've been doing to this point, what are some of the next things or the next steps happening, what's the process going forward, basically, is what we'll have them talk about. So, Nikki Farrington, Chris Gavin.
Welcome.
This picture is part of their presentation is an attempt to give to you kind of a sneak peek as to what the public will be seeing at a public open house on October 26th.
Right, yep, so not only are we going to talk a little bit about what we've been doing the last few months, but then also looking forward to this month here of public involvement. So if you click the right button.
Sean, do you got your quick? Technology.
Scroll it. Okay. So the first thing I want to talk about is just what we've been up to the last few months in terms of public outreach. So we had a booth at both Checkout New Prague in August, and we also had a tent up right before the parade at Donating Days. The point of this was just to be out where the public was. We had boards up with the logo, we had flyers with the website address on it so people could get more information. At both places, we had a handful of people come up and ask us questions. Again, the whole point was just to be out in the public and get them aware of the project, and I think we accomplished that. We plan on being at these events in the next 2 years as well, so we get closer to the 2020 construction. Some of the things that I just wanted to talk about, the discussions and debate that has been going on right now. So again, after the June open house that we had, it was decided to move forward with the parking configuration that included both parallel parking on both sides, so basically existing configuration that had parallel parking and 2 lanes of traffic. With that though, we had some discussion about what's the appropriate size of the roadway as we go through the downtown core. So as you can see on this image here, the existing current between the curbs is about 50 feet. So again, between the curbs, that includes the parking bays and the 2 travel lanes. We had, again, discussions internally with our own project team, with the city staff, and also with MnDOT. And like I said, there was debate, and as you can see on here, there was a couple different ranges of where we thought that the right fit of that side of the roadway was. We had MnDOT, and again, internally, even in MnDOT, they had lots of debate and discussion on this. But their narrowest section was this 40-foot section. The city, and part of the reason for that 40-foot proposed from the MnDOT staff was the idea that the narrower you make the road, the slower traffic actually goes through the downtown. So again, it was a safety feature that they wanted to kind of implement, was some way to slow down traffic. And while the city staff acknowledged the need for that, they recognized the need to narrow up the cross-section. They had some other concerns that they wanted to address too, that include snow removal or snow storage capacity, and then just the ease of getting in and out of car doors with the amount of traffic on Main Street. So they had some other issues. So they actually wrote a memo and gave it to MnDOT that kind of laid out some of their issues and concerns. And so with that, MnDOT went back and had some more discussions. And overall, the compromise that has come out of this is a 44-foot section. The project staff just wanted council aware of kind of this interaction that was going on. So again, there was some debate and back and forth. But that 44-foot width is what will be shared with the public. The layout that will be shared in the public open house will have that 44-foot, again, curb to curb width, and the extra 3 feet on each side would be added to the sidewalk. Some other things we'll be sharing with the public on October 26th will be different options for traffic control at both First Avenue, Northeast Southeast, and at Columbus Avenue. These two locations experience the most traffic. The existing traffic signal is obviously already there on First, but in the future, Columbus would be in a similar situation with the amount of traffic that would be using that intersection. And so through traffic operations analysis, it was determined that both, either an option to have both intersections have traffic signals, or both options have mini roundabouts. The image on the right there is St. James, just recently constructed 2 mini roundabouts within their downtown. And that's an image of that there. So at the open house, we'll not only have a layout that shows how that fits within the New Prague downtown, but also some video that shows how large trucks and buses actually traverse through that roundabout, so people can have a visual idea of how that actually works.
Nick, you can clarify on that one, is that it's not the same as the existing roundabout that you see and experience, that these for the larger vehicles, just to lay some fears aside, semis, a lot of the buses can drive right straight over the top of it as if they're staying in their lane. They can choose to follow it, or they can just drive straight through. You'll find as we look at that and as we hear from the public that there are various websites that we have that have shown turning movements and traffic through these mini roundabouts, and that they are potentially workable in this kind of setting.
Yeah, so with that image, what you see that center, it's a mountable curve, so it doesn't raise, it doesn't curve that you see in roundabouts you have today. It actually is mountable so that people can drive over it to accommodate those larger vehicles. But again, traffic operations were done for both existing traffic and 2040 traffic and show that both of these options work and operate well. So again, we'll be sharing both those options with the public. Another option that we'll be sharing is an actual difference in parking. And again, this is only being suggested in front of the library. And this option is a back-end parking option. Some of the benefits of this, again, the maneuver itself in terms of back-end parking is very similar to parallel parking between two vehicles. You actually go in front and go past the parking spot and then back in. The benefits include, especially families with young children, the doors open up, the children are actually directed back to the sidewalk instead of out to the street in a typical perpendicular parking situation. It's easier to leave the stall, obviously, when you get with compared to front-end parking. You're not looking backwards, but you're actually looking forward to make that maneuver. And with this option, it does allow for more parking in front of the library. However, this would take away the parking on the north side and move that to the south side, so there'd be the same amount of parking on that block, but it'd all be on the south side. So there's some advantages and disadvantages to that. And again, we'll be sharing this with the public at October 26th.
So on that, with the library, does it go, does it cut more of the boulevard out then to get that extra lane?
It would.
Okay.
Are you going to have somebody there helping people back up?
It might take some learning. Yeah, there'll be a learning curve for this. Again, just to give you an example, this has been implemented in St. James, and so we do have some live action cameras showing people actually doing this maneuver and how it's working for them. And again, we do still have the option of parallel parking in front of the library as well, so there is an option just to keep the parking as is. This is just another option to share with the public and get their feedback on.
How far does that go to? From the corner to?
From Lincoln to
Pershing, so
to
Pershing
Pershing?
is on the north side there, so it's just before Pershing. Yeah.
Okay.
And then at Pershing, there'd be a little bit more of a curb extension then, it kind of goes that full length of that parking bay. So you can narrow
For the crosswalk
for the
area that's
crosswalk
there
area.
now.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So again, at the open house, we'll have a layout that maybe shows a little visually a little better to people. I'm going to hand this over to Chris. He's going to talk a little about some of our detour options that we're sharing.
Thank you. Well, one of the common questions we keep getting from folks is, where are you going to detour traffic? So there's a couple of things that we have to deal with, obviously, when you start thinking about this project. Not only dealing with the traffic that's either passing through New Prague, but also how do we maintain access to the areas, the businesses along Main Street, the residents, the neighborhoods, and things like that. So we've actually got two parking options, or detour options, that we're going to share with the public, and kind of looking for more for feedback. And the reason I'm showing this detour option A, because that's what's out there right now today. We work that MnDOT's doing there east of town. I'm not sure it necessarily works for what our goals are going to try to be for this project. Again, trying to maintain traffic closer to the businesses, et cetera. So we are showing an option B. Well, just maybe again explain the options. Option A is basically keeping the main trunk highway through traffic to have it detour around New Prague using Trunk Highway 13, Scott County 2, and Trunk Highway 21 back out to 19 to the west. That's presuming we have a lot of traffic that passes through town. I think the reality is we have traffic that really the point of attraction is New Prague, and that the percentage of traffic actually passing through is probably small. And again, our big goal is how do we deal with the downtown and access to that area? So I think the option that probably addresses that more closely is a detour option that's probably more closer to what we might see during Dolshinki weekend, where 7th Street or County Road 37 is kind of the main detour along the north side. I know there's going to be some concerns expressed by the neighbors and the residents in that area about increased traffic. So one of the options we've showed as a kind of a way to kind of alleviate that is to have a directional detour. So for example, eastbound traffic would actually detour down 21, pick County Road 29, and then back up on County Road 3 to 19. Westbound traffic would come into town, take the 37, County Road 37 bypass, and get through. The advantage to this is it'll be able to help us provide better control or directional traffic to businesses on the south side of Main Street, businesses on the north side of Main Street, trying to provide some mobility around the area. The other goal that will be ours during the phasing is to try to look at trying to maintain some type, one of these streets, probably First Avenue or Columbus, one or the other at all times as a crossover route from north to south, and trying to get both of them open up actually as soon as possible. So again, this is just some information we want to provide to the public, get some reaction. We have actually spoken with both counties just to kind of get their reaction, and don't seem to have any issues there.
Chris, could you describe for those at home that can't see them what the areas in yellow?
Yeah, again, the areas in yellow are probably would be the main detours would be the orange, and this is for the traffic that is actually trying to pass through New Prague. But where yellow is going to be more directional to bring people to obtain the access to businesses. So right here I'm showing you on the south side is First Avenue Southeast, and 10th Avenue would be main access points. And from the north it would have to be Columbus. The lines in blue are really the blocks behind. On the north side would be 2nd Street and 1st Street. And on the south side, mostly 1st Street there. Obviously, we have kind of the challenge of getting past the park and things like that. So that's, again, the key of trying to maintain some type of north-south access there, Columbus and First Avenue, one or the other at all times.
Chris, remind us again how long the project's going to take.
Well, the intent is to have it be substantially complete in one season, so starting in the spring and having this basically open to traffic before the end of the construction season. So it's predominantly, there'd still be some work happening the following spring, but it'd be more like cleanup and landscaping and touch up like that.
Was there a reason that they didn't piecemeal it within that same time frame, like do the west half from the library out or something, and then?
You mean in the same season?
In the same season.
We would probably actually be looking at that. They would probably, again, the construction will probably likely happen, it'll have to happen on the west end down by 21. That's a given. That's because where all the sanitary sewer and the water main flows to that end. That's the point where you start. By looking at it phasing, we also look at probably there might be a second crew would come up and try to get one of those intersections, get into one of those intersections, get those utilities in, get it restored, and get it back opened up so that that one can be kept open as a through traffic. And then at that point, they could probably go to that next intersection, Columbus or First Avenue, do the same deal, get that open to traffic. That way we can at least have that north-south opened up.
Sure.
While the first crew's working from west towards east, and then, so we see some phasing and probably multiple crews happening at the same time.
Great.
Chris, on a project like this, how does it, like the truck traffic, are all the roads like for this detour meant for truck? And they obviously aren't meant, but can they hold up to truck traffic?
Yes, all these routes in orange are either state aid or county state aid highways, and they are meant, we cannot even restrict truck traffic. We'll accommodate that.
Chris, you want to touch on, we just had a meeting here in the last several weeks, actually a couple of times. Scott County has come to us with a proposal on redoing County Road 37 next year in 2018. You want to talk about that?
Yeah.
We haven't even gotten that to the council. That's on the next meeting to try to bring that information forward, but that's...
The preview. So, yes, the stretch of County Road 37 from 19 up to 21, it's currently a county state aid highway. Scott County is, through a pretty standard normal process, is having discussions with us about doing improvements to this and then doing what they call a turn back, where it actually would come to the city and actually be a local road. It would be a state aid road, just like our other significant roadways in town. It will receive state aid funding, et cetera. And again, it's meant to handle larger vehicles and truck traffic and things like that. In fact, all the roads in yellow are also our state aid roads and are made to accommodate truck traffic. Again, I would venture to guess that if you have a regular truck that has to pass through the frame, they're going to use the route in orange, or they're going to find some other route if they're passing through the area. It's really more how do we get people into town, get people as close as we can to the local businesses, et cetera, and try to make some type of normalcy for the folks here. And if anybody ever traveled through St. Peter when they did Highway 169, you'll recall that they had a southbound detour and northbound detour on different routes to kind of help alleviate, reduce a little bit of the traffic passing through town. That's kind of the same concept we're showing here.
Chris, County Road 37 currently, because of the construction on the east side, 37 has seen a significant increase in traffic. And to actually merge into 37 from some of the crossroads, it is becoming very difficult. Under this particular project, would you consider perhaps making a three-way stop or some sort of a stop sign so that it allows for the residents to get onto 37?
That's a good question, and we haven't kind of looked at it at that level, but we definitely be having to look at some additional traffic control. That's kind of why we showed like at 21, Highway 21 and County Road 37, we'd have to look at something out on the highway there. So it's interesting that you mentioned that, because obviously the detour is not to go through there, but obviously that's what we're seeing a lot of traffic is using it anyway. So I think, again, the reason we would probably not look at option A as a detour option is because they're ultimately going to do this. And so what we need to do is figure out how can we best manage this situation here.
Have we taken into consideration the school traffic along 37? You've got the middle school, you've got the high school, Falcon Ridge, and also as you go towards 21, you've got a lot of Raven Stream traffic. You've got a lot of things going on there, especially with people both the him and
Yeah, that traffic on 37 is residential people trying to get over to the east side, because we can't take 19 out of town. We have to go through the residential area to get up to 2.
Yeah, these are obviously comments that we're going to hear. Obviously, the bulk of construction is going to be when school is out of session, but that doesn't preclude that issue being in the spring and then fall. And again, if we try to detour the traffic anywhere else, I think we're ultimately going to see these kind of traffic patterns happening. And again, we can find it, if we plan for it up front, we can try to accommodate and control it that way.
Is there a way to limit some of those streets to only local residents so that you don't have people going through and turning streets into highways?
Well, it could be a combination of the two detours, send truck traffic out around town, and then cars more than anything through town.
Well, again, back up again. Again, we're basing the assumption on the majority of the traffic is actually is the residents and people accessing the businesses in New Prague. That the traffic that's regularly going to be traveling through New Prague is probably going to find another route, or they're going to they're going to find more accommodating routes. We are going to do, working with MnDOT, there is a potential to try to evaluate exactly what kind of traffic we have actually passing through, what percentage of traffic is passing through versus what is coming to town. So again, we're not at the level of detail where we looked at things to that, to that point. We'll be working on plans in 2018 and early 2019, and that's when we'll be addressing a lot of that. So these are good. These are the good comments that we'll be hearing from the public. I want to share with the public. The other item that I just want to kind of highlight a little bit here. This is a little hard to tell if you can get kind of your bearings. This is a hydrology map looking at more contours and elevations. So the main street is this area right here. Highway 21 on the west side, actually over here, my mouse. And Phillips Creek runs along here. So the area in purple is, by elevation, is the lower and depressed areas. And many of you are aware that on the west end, down by the railroad tracks, we have a lot of urban flooding, especially during big events. Currently, we have some very undersized storm sewer. With this project, it will be upsized. It'll have a lot more capacity. The key is, from our preliminary review of this, is it's not going to fully eliminate urban flooding. It'll definitely improve the situation, but it won't get rid of it completely. Part of the issue is, and we found this out in a little more detail through the study, is that up north of 2nd Street, where the Phillips Creek crosses under the railroad, there seems to be a restriction from those culverts. They're large, but just because of hydraulics. We feel that it's actually creating a backup situation during heavy events. And we've always said that, and this is from experience, that usually like about a day later after a big rain, if we get a rainstorm again the following afternoon, that's when we seem to see the most issues with flooding in some of those lower areas along 2nd Avenue, down along Main Street. And it's because the creek is high and it's restricted. And again, the restriction seems to be just north of the project area. Not something that's going to be taken care of under this project, but at least we can identify the issue a little better. A couple of quick items. I'm not going to, we tossed in this slide, that was just to kind of explain again, down by the railroad tracks, going into Phillips Creek. That, again, we'll be increasing the capacity under this project. So it will be an improvement over what's there, but again, it will not eliminate the risk of urban flooding down in that area. Another item that's, I think, of interest and we'll share with the public is, probably more of interest, is I know there's been some discussions of a potential Veterans Memorial down in the park. There's actually a storm pipe that flows from Pershing, angles across the ball field over to 1st Street Southeast over at Lincoln. And that pipe is actually undersized, and the capacity needs to be increased. So we actually have the ability to revise the alignment a little bit, increase the capacity, and provide a little more space for the potential Veterans Memorial over there.
Is that the ball field there, Chris? Will that require the removal of the fence?
Well, I think what we try to do is try to do a little staggered alignment, try to get around the ball field. But we also, there's some tile lines that tie into that too, and if we can improve some of that drainage too, we're going to try to do that as well. So I'm going to turn it back over to Nikki.
Thanks. Just want to give you a preview too of some of the other activities that are going on. Now, because there's federal funds being put towards this project through MnDOT, we do have to go through the NEPA process, which is the National Environmental Protection Policy Act. And so that means that we have to document any kind of environmental impacts for the area around the project. And so a few of the things that are being looked at right now is there is some people looking at historic properties and determining if they're eligible for, again, this protection under NEPA in terms of impacts. We're looking at parkland impacts. There is some wetlands near the creek that also have to be documented. Again, we're removing the culvert there and resizing that, so there are some wetland impacts. And then the last thing is potential contaminated properties. And so one thing that we did hear from MnDOT, so soon, they'll be out there and they do cores into the road looking for contamination. And so look for that. What we also heard from them is that most of it will be within their own right-of-way. And if they do need to go on any private property or even a local street, that they have to ask permission first. So they won't be able to go anywhere except their right-of-way to do those corings. And as of right now, I think most of what they're looking at is just within their right-of-way. But just to be aware that these are some other things that as we look at some of our options, obviously that back-end parking may have some parkland impacts. And what that means is the last three words at the bottom there. So the first thing we're supposed to do is to show ability to avoid the impact. If we can't avoid it, then we have to minimize what that impact is. And then the last thing we have to do is mitigate if there is going to be an impact. So those are the things that are kind of in our world, especially historic properties. When we start looking at streetscaping, we may be limited in terms of what we can do visually in front of those buildings. So those are the kind of things that we still have to go through these filters through the NEPA to kind of make final decisions on. We just want to make sure that you are aware of some of those other activities that were going on. So the final thing that I have is just what's coming up. So like I said, we do have the open house. It'll be open to the public. We'll have layouts, we'll have visuals, lots more details. And again, the point is to get input from the public. Some of the great comments we got here tonight, that's what we're hoping to get about detour routes and staging. And so that will be October 26th. That will be here in the council chambers at City Hall. We sent out invites on Friday to call it a business meeting. I think we called it an information meeting. Those were just to property owners and renters that are adjacent to the corridor. So again, we wanted to reach out to them first, so we're giving them an opportunity to come in before the open house to talk about the project, to give them a heads up about what the project is showing. And then there's a subset of those property owners that actually might have some access changes. And so we're actually going to reach out this week individually to them and talk a little bit about potential changes, such as closures to their access. We're only looking at closures if they already have another access on a local street. And again, this is a safety feature. The less access you have, the less conflicts that you have on the roadway. So again, we're only looking at access closure if they have some other better access onto a local street. But again, we want to reach out to them individually and talk to them first, again, ahead of this open house.
Okay. Anyone have any questions for?
Oh, and then Chris wanted to talk just briefly about.
Chris always wants to get the last word in.
I promise.
Just get that last word in, Chris.
Promise I won't be long-winded here. Just to recap that, while this is a project working with MnDOT, a team project, this is also still part of our typical public improvement process, just a little bit on a larger scale. We will be preparing a feasibility study. I expect that we'll have that, all the facts kind of pulled together, so for probably likely in December sometime. And that we'd be looking at a public hearing likely in January. The only thing that will control that is if we have a few things still hanging between us and MnDOT and on some of the details. But again, feasibility study will look at the scope, the cost, the portions that the city will have to finance, and how is the city going to finance those portions of the project.
That's this December?
This December with a report, and then probably, I would presume probably the second meeting in January for a public hearing. That's tentatively what we'll be looking at. Again, there'll be information sent out to affected property owners, et cetera. So.
Okay. Good. Well, thank you both very much. It was very informative. Hopefully you'll have a lot of public input at your meetings, and we can continue to move forward. Looking forward to that project. Okay. Mike, do you want to take the next one, the golf course?
Yes, I can introduce it with what we've gotten as a recommendation from the golf board, that in the materials that you received following approval at their meeting last Tuesday, their monthly meeting for September. They are providing recommendations for both membership and basically green fees, cart fees for 2018. Primarily the desire there is to be able to get information assembled for marketing purposes, to get it out to the existing membership base and customers, because people are starting to already now look ahead as to where they want to play golf next year. So while we're really not intending to go through in significant detail the budget process tonight, what they are recommending, I believe, is a 3% increase to the membership fees and about a $1 increase to the golf cart fees.
No, golf.
Excuse me, the green fees, excuse me, I said that wrong, with no change in the cart fees for 2018. Patty and I have had one meeting with Wade in review of the golf budget. As it stands now, that there might be some slight refinement as they come in, but you know, to address that, if you are to approve the membership fees and the green fees and the card fees tonight as recommended, then any adjustments that would have to be made as we take a look at the would come from the expenditure side of the operation. So we've had one review and attempted to get things narrowed down. They're reasonably close, but there may be some additional refinement that has to occur. Right now, their total budgetary operations, revenues over expenditures are up a little over $11,000 over the 2017 budget. So it's probably a little bit higher than we would like to see, and you know, there are some items or elements in there that when we bring Wade in for the review of the golf budget, the council hasn't started the enterprise review at this point, that we would have discussions on some of those elements, probably following additional review by Patty and myself before that would occur. So the only action that is being asked for tonight is to approve the membership fees and the green fees with a $1 increase and no change in the card fees.
Okay. Any questions for Mike on that?
In putting that together, I should add, is they take a look at that one of the things, the challenge in the golf industry is to be competitive in the local market and area. I don't believe it's included now, but we will when we bring in the budget, is trying to take a look at what the current rate analysis was that was done by the golf board, taking a look at the area courses from Montgomery to Ridges at Sand Creek.
Yeah, we looked at Ridges, Creeks Bend, Montgomery, Heritage, Boulder Point. Yeah, and we were pretty much right in line with all of them. So we feel that with these increases, we'll still be right in line with the golf market. And we all felt that it was something that we needed to do, even though you don't gain a lot on the membership fees, but the green fees. And then we're also working on a marketing plan to how to use different social medias and things like that to get more rounds played. We also have the 2018 state tournament coming to town. How do we use that as a marketing tool to get people to come to the golf course before the tournament or after the tournament games and things like that. So, I think we've got a good, and Chris is on the board. He knows that we're working hard and we're trying to improve the cash flow situation on the golf course. Does anyone have any questions on what we're doing tonight? If not, I guess I'll make a motion to approve the new rates and membership fees for the golf course for 2018.
Second.
Second by Sean Ryan. Any other comments? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay. Passes 5-0. Ken, I think you got the next two, right?
I do.
Next three.
A few of them.
Or next 4, too?
So I'll take items 5 and 6 together. So every
Okay.
year from September 15th, from one year to the following year, we have nuisance mowing charges and then unpaid utility bills. So basically, to put it simply, we had 6 properties we mowed this year. It's about $1,500. So that's the resolution for item number 5. And that includes our administrative fee to have service come out and mow them and then do the administrative paperwork to get to this point of assessing. And then utility billing at $7,500 in unpaid bills that are delinquent and would be assessed to the property tax rolls for those property owners this year. You can see we've kind of been up and down over the years on the mowing. We have years upwards of $20,000 in mowing we've done. This year, about $1,500, and then utility bills have been up and down. Really not tied to the economy, so to say, when looking at the data in the years here, but about $7,500 this year to be assessed to the tax. So people that got the notices actually have until the 15th of October to get those paid. On that point, we will then take any paid property owners off the list and certify only the ones that were not paid at that time. So this is a list as of basically when we put this together last week, but it will likely shrink and the dollar amounts get changed as they get paid. Get that in front of you so then we're ready to turn it in on the 15th. Those remain.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Anyone have any questions for Ken regarding adding the mowing and utility bill charges to the tax roll?
I move to approve the resolution, both, is it 2 resolutions? Yeah,
Two
2.
separate.
We need to do them separately, right?
Yes.
So I move to approve resolution approving the certification of mowing and property maintenance charges to the property tax roll.
Seconded.
Okay, I got a motion by Amy Jurek, second by Dave Brusick to add the mowing and property maintenance charges to the tax roll. If there's no other comments, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, that passes 5-0.
I move to approve the resolution approving the certification of municipal utility billing charges to the property tax rolls.
I'll second that. So I have a motion by Amy Jurek, second by Chuck Nicolai. If there's no other comments, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? All right, passes 5-0. Thank you. You're doing the next one.
I am. So we have a summary from the Planning Commission meeting that we had at the end of September for a couple of front setback variances for the applicants Fred and Karen Spear. And I believe Fred is here in the audience if you have any comments or questions for him. So they applied for a variance for a couple of front yard setback reductions. In their neighborhood, they have a 30-foot minimum front setback. And they're requesting that to be reduced back to 17.5 feet for a front entry addition for an ADA ramp. And then also a 21-foot, or a reduction to 21 feet from a 30-foot front setback for their existing home at 402 Central Avenue South. Again, that front porch addition would only be 2 feet closer to the front property line than today. So today it's 19.5 feet, and they want that to be 17.5 feet. That's really to provide for an ADA ramp to be added to the home. Basically to provide for the footings. Ramp itself will project closer to the road. We actually have exceptions in our ordinance for stairways themselves and ramps themselves. We actually measure the setback to the footings that support that structure. So the actual support area would be, again, at the 2 foot closer than what exists today. The second front setback variance is actually an addition on the south side of the home that would be no closer to the road on Central than the existing home. It just would actually extend that front edge of the house, and we'll take a look at that here in a little more detail. But that would be 21 feet to the front property line, and again, would not be closer to the road than the existing house, but since it is an addition and a further encroachment into that 30-foot front setback, it does have to be acknowledged as a variance. Do want to note as well that the entire house will be re-sided as part of the project. It'll have a uniform look when completed. Should be a nice improvement to the property overall. We did have public comment received at the public hearing. It was only from the applicant who noted that the ramp would be used for visitors to his home and then eventually for personal use as well. And here's an air photo of the property outlined in blue here. So they have Central Avenue South as the frontage road, and then they actually have an alley out the side. So you can see they have a small existing kind of a porch on the south side of the property. They're just looking at extending that in line with the home. It would meet all the other setbacks except for that front setback, 21 feet to line up with the front portion of the existing home. And then the front porch addition is basically right in the middle of the home, extending 2 feet closer. A couple things to point out, we look at neighborhood conditions and we look at variances, and the home to the north is actually at 17 feet of that front property line currently. I should back up a little bit. So the property is in RL 84. Kind of a mix of older homes that were built anywhere from the 1940s to the 1980s, kind of depending on the neighborhood. This home has a mix of all of those ages of homes. And you have a little bit older home, but again, as I find here, about 17 feet from that front property line. You actually go just north of the next cross street, and you have a home that is within 9 feet of Central Avenue, and then even closer to the cross street. So again, just kind of a varying conditions on the neighborhood. To the south of this home, there's a home that exists, actually the detached garage is about 26 feet from that front property line. So there's not a 30-foot standard by any means anywhere in this neighborhood, other than the home directly across the street. It has to be a little bit newer and doesn't meet that requirement. In staff's opinion, the planning commission's opinion, the neighborhood conditions, particularly on this side of the block, are not uniform and do not meet that 30-foot setback. A little bit better detail line sketch. The green line is actually where that 30-foot setback and then the 7-foot side yard setbacks is located. You see the front porch addition, again, at that 21 feet to the front property line. So that will just line up the house, and then again the 2-foot encroachment into that front setback off the front for the ADA ramp. So pretty minor, and then again noting that it would be further away from the road than the house directly to the north. A couple of photos here for you. So again, this small addition area would be extended up to the front of the house. The roof line would be uniform across on the new addition. So you basically have this portion of the home have the same front along Central Avenue all the way to the edge. And then that's front, sort of another photo. This front porch area here, there's kind of a brick, call it like a small knee wall. I'm actually going to remove that, and that's what would be extended out to provide for the ADA accessibility into that home on the front. And then just looking south of the home, you can see the detached garage at about 26 feet south of the home, south of the alley. And then looking north again, the applicant's home here, the home at 17 feet, and then on down the line. Just another aerial view. Again, you can see the subject home here. So not a drastic change by any means in the neighborhood. Shouldn't have any ill effect on any of the surrounding properties. So ultimately, staff and the planning commission both did recommend approval of the variance to allow for those front setback reductions for the front entry and for the addition on the south side of the home with all the conditions, or excuse me, all the findings listed in the staff report. That's all I have for the report. Again, the applicant, Mr. Fred Spear, is in the audience should you have any questions.
Okay. Anyone have any questions? If not, I guess I'll make a motion to approve the variance.
Second.
You second that? Second by Sean Ryan. Any other questions or comments? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Passes 5-0. Next, Ken, are you taking this too?
I'll take this one.
You're on a roll.
So if the council will recall, maybe you'd be new to this, but about a year ago, actually, at our September 19th council meeting, we had a developers agreement approved with GTT Properties LLC, who is more commonly known as Mark Deutsch, for a roadway extension of First Street Southeast portion of the road, which we most recently talked about with the senior housing project extending south of the Holy Trinity Church property and then over between 10th Avenue and Shalewski. So Mr. Deutsch owns the lot south of Walgreens, and he is going to put in, ultimately develop the property or sell it, but he's going to put in the required portion of the public road. And the developer's agreement said that that road had to be installed by October 1, 2017. Obviously, we're beyond that date here. I think it was last Monday we had a pre-con meeting with Marv, went over that fact that, hey, we're not going to make it with the road construction in the next week. We should bring this to council tonight to get an amendment to the developers agreement. Basically, what the developers agreement allowed for in that original agreement is that he could build the road. We would not accept it until he then plats property, new lot and block, and is donated the right of way. It has not happened yet, and he still does not intend to do that at this point. We will not accept that roadway until that date that it's platted and accepted by the city. Now, we still are going to have our city inspector from SCH inspect the road during construction. Is basically built to city street standard and will function as any future public road, but not until it's platted. Mr. Deutsch, understanding that he didn't want to run against the time frame again, and staff, we have no issue with this. If the road happened to sit until his requested date of June 1, 2020 until we accept it, we would obviously be looking at that road and making sure that, you know, during that last couple of years, if there's any damage to the road that occurred, we would have to have that fixed before we would take that over. And that's kind of a risk Mr. Deutsch is taking with this amendment to delay that agreement until the year June, or until June 1 of 2020, but we don't see any other issue aside from that being basically his risk to do that. So basically the amendment is to change the date from October 1 of this year, which was actually on Sunday, and extend that out to June 1 of 2020 so that you get it platted and constructed. Very likely, I actually talked to Mr. Deutsch yesterday, and he indicated that the weather has been holding him up. He had intended to start construction. He would plan to still construct the road and get basically the first lift of bituminous on yet this fall, and then next spring put the final lift of bituminous on. It would not be open for public use until, again, we accept it as a public roadway, but it would sit there and be barricaded, and basically, you know, I think we've left that we're going to plow or anything because there wouldn't be anybody driving. So that's all outlined in our original agreement with him, but we just want to kind of refresh everybody's mind here that that is remaining the case. That's really what I have, and then the last page is basically, it's a very short segment of First Street that he's installing. So not a large project, but we just wanted to make sure that we all have this in writing, and then we'll look where he stands and where the city stands, and finally taking it over.
Okay, any questions?
Just curious when we're gonna do the full connection. Are you working with the Beckius property right there?
We're probably looking at where we're at this point, the state bank, or excuse me, the senior living project, due to time constraints, likely will do their own segment, and that will happen in 2018. Probably by mid-year they'll be complete. Mr. Deutsch's project will be done. It's likely that we would see our project move forward as a public improvement project, and that probably would be constructed until 2019, and we need basically final confirmation from Holy Trinity and then Becky's family to be involved in that. But we've got general agreement at this point, and I think the real final point is getting the final construction design on the senior project portion of the roadway, so that we know what, if any, additional right-of-way from Holy Trinity is needed before we have them basically commit to that. But in the meetings we have, we don't see any roadblocks to that. So it'll likely be 2019, it just ended up being kind of a timing.
So will we run into a problem where, on this one, where we won't be, if that road goes in all the way, will then we be able to use that as a public, I mean, even though if he doesn't have it platted by then? What do we do then?
Yes, that could be an issue, certainly. I think Mr. Deutsch realizes that if that happens, there's value in having that connection made, certainly for marketing purposes, and then also just for the functionality of his own site. Yeah, that is certainly a real concern that's out there. But I think there's really no reason not to plat it. It's just kind of he is his own contractor and doing the work. And like I said, we've already had a pre-con. He's put his security money down. He's put down 125% of the improvement. We've got that. The equipment's on site. So I don't think it'll end up holding us up at all.
When you say barricade, what do you have, the orange cone sitting there? I'm just trying to think of the aesthetics of the neighborhood and the residents there.
But what type of barricade had we?
At the end of First Street?
Correct.
It'd be that permanent type, T3 type, be the 3 boards with the white and red on there, and then it would be another sign that says Future Through Street, and then also they call it the red diamond reflective. It's just as we would do on any other dead-end street.
Visually not look any different than any other road that's yet to be completed. Yeah. Perfect.
Okay, any other questions?
I'll make a motion to approve right in front of me,
Approve the extension.
developer's agreement with GTT.
Okay, I got a motion by Dave Brusick, second by Sean Ryan. There's no other further comments or questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay. Number 9.
I believe what you have in front of you is an inquiry from Councilmember Jurek, who's been asked to possibly serve on the new Memorial Park Veterans Memorial Committee. She was approached by the commander of the American Legion. He's indicated their willingness to serve, subject to any discussion and approval by the council. But if you recall, when they were first in talking about this project, they talked about the possibility of trying to expand the committee. I don't know that I can tell you who is technically all on that committee. Amy, you may know more about that than we do, but we don't have specifically the information from Ms. Means and or the American Legion or VFW as to who all is involved and who is coordinating the funding or the collection of the funds and where the planning is still going. But Amy had inquired talked about putting it on for council review, consideration, and approval, that anyone that would be appointed, whether it be or anybody else, technically is involved in whatever that planning may be, but in all likelihood, if anything were to come into the city, that's going to have to come back in front of the council as one would reasonably expect in that fashion. But at least provide some input and some interaction back and forth between the two parties in the planning process. You heard from Chris tonight that as we're taking a look at the utility planning for the Main Street project, that there may be likely to upside the storm sewer, relocate it, and expand part of the area that could be made available to the Memorial Committee to construct that memorial.
I just wanted council members to know and be aware of that the connection was made, they asked, and I feel it's totally advisory, just to give them, when they're at some point, okay, now you need to go to the city for this or that. So that's what I see in my perspective or both.
Okay. Do we need to make a formal motion on that? Okay, well, then I make a motion to allow Amy Jurek, council member, to be on the Veterans Committee, Memorial Committee.
Second?
We got a second by Maggie Bass. Any other comments? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, passes 5-0. Well, good luck.
Just remember that George Dopey made a promise.
Yes, I will remind him.
I made a lot of promises, but I talked to Ken, and somehow Ken wasn't aware of some of those.
Wednesday's the first meeting I've been invited to.
Okay. Next on the agenda is the budget workshop dates. The only thing I would ask is the golf, if we decide to do the 30th, or the golf needs to be after the next meeting, Mike. You know, our next meeting is 24th, so if we did a budget workshop on the 9th, I don't think the golf would be ready.
We would be looking for the golf on that one in the first place. That would be all of the general fund departments, public works, public safety, planning, building inspection, and all of the other general fund budget that we could get in that we wouldn't typically get to the enterprise or the other ones until the second and or third meeting. So that would work out
Okay. Do you think we need all 3 meetings, Mike? Do you think we can do it in 2? I know most of us have been through it. Maggie's the only one who's going to be a newbie at it, so I don't want to rush her.
She's a smart study. She can get it done in one.
Thank you.
You know, we could go through it as we typically have in the past. Generally, we're mostly done in 2, but that third one typically has been all the enterprise funds that we don't get done in that second meeting. And, you know, my only purpose was trying to at least identify the dates, whether we need all the dates or not. At least we've got some picked out and targeted so that people have knowledge of how do you plan your October and November schedules, and whether we need to go all 3 is a choice. But I think we've generally done it in about 3.
Okay. Patty's giving us a scowl.
Sneeze.
Oh, you sneeze, okay. How does the 9th work and the 30th work for October for everyone?
We typically try to stay away from Wednesdays, which that was church night for many members, and just try to keep it to the off Mondays, but certainly for the benefit of trying to work with staff, it's also helpful to be able to pick out these days and get them scheduled so that they know what meetings they'll need to know what they need to be at.
Are we looking at 6 o'clock start again?
We can if that's the desire.
We went earlier, didn't we, for budget?
Oh, we can.
I think on the 30th, we've got a pool committee meeting, though, it's the 4th Monday.
And we have utility meeting. So
The 4th Monday is the 23rd.
Okay.
Yeah, there's an extra Monday, huh?
Yeah, there's an extra Monday in October. Yeah, your utility is the 30th.
Yeah. So 6 p.m. works for me.
Okay. So the 9th, 6 p.m. on the 9th work for everyone? Okay.
How late are we gonna go?
What do we usually go, 2 hours? After that, we get kind of stir crazy, so. So 6 to 8 we'll plan. And then the 30th, I want to try that also, 6 to 8. I know all you out there are wishing that you were on the council and could just be involved in all these meetings. I know you're there. And then we can tentatively put the 13th if we need it. Does that work for everyone? Okay. We got that set.
Because in December, we would hold our budget public hearing on the 4th, where you are able to answer any questions. We've got typically the latter part of November is when the truth and taxation notices come out. And so we're required to hold that hearing on the 4th, and then your final adoption of the budget for 2018 would be on December 18th.
Yep.
And that would close the process.
Okay. Well, that sounds good. Great. We got that on the calendar. So we'll see everyone next Monday. Next on the agenda, consent agenda. Anyone have any questions or issues on anything in the consent agenda? If not, I guess I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Second by Amy Jurg. If there's no other questions, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposition? Okay, passes 5-0. Okay, next, miscellaneous. Okay, this is the time I'm going to open it up for public comment. Again, I ask if you would be so kind to come to the microphone, state your name, your address, your concern. I don't know how many people want to talk tonight, but let's be cognizant of people's times and go from there. So anyone who would like to speak, is more than welcome, come to the podium. Go ahead.
Oh, I can wait. Absolutely, no, I'll take seconds, go ahead.
My name is Sam Erickson Sr. I'm a business owner in this town. I own Lucid Tattoo, 436 Main Street West. I'm also a resident in this town at 201st Street Southwest. As you guys may or may not be aware, there's some utilities billing issues in this community. I think that quite a few people in the community are fed up and upset with what's going on. And it really all started for me as a business owner 5 years ago when I opened my business in town. I haven't been able to get a bill mailed to me yet. I have complained with the city, and complained with the city, and complained with the city, to be told that basically I'm throwing my bill away, I'm not handling my business properly. Laura Lee is rude and condescending when I go in there to try to figure this stuff out. I brought my business here. I want to have my business in this community. I want to have my home in this community. I want to have my son in the schools in this community, one of the best school districts in the state. I think that this community is an awesome, loving community. It's a God-fearing community with a bunch of churches and a bunch of outlets for our youth, academically and just culturally. I think it's a wonderful place to raise our kids. But there is something definitely wrong going on in the Utilities Commission in this town. There are people that have 2,500 square foot homes that are being charged $200 a month for electricity. They have 8 kids, out-yard sprinklers. That's their whole entire bill. You have houses in this town that are one person living in that residence that are maybe a 900 square foot resident that are paying 4 times that. There's no answers to be had. People's sewage is all messed up, people's water bills are all messed up, and we're the people. We have a right to know where our money's going, why it's going there. I don't get a bill every month for my tattoo shop. Every month I'm hand-delivered my bill, and within 24 hours I come in and pay it. Now, there's no showing me my units that I've used, there's no recollection for my bills except for a hand-delivered notice. That's not fair. I know I'm not the only person. If you go onto Facebook happenings, New Prague happenings, you'll see that this is happening to several residents in this community. Therefore, if I don't get my bill, which is by law recommended, right, that's the law, you guys get a late fee from me every month for 5 years now, and I'm not able to obtain my deposit back. That's what I'm addressing today. I don't think I'll be the only person addressing these situations. This isn't the last you've heard from us. We're going to grow in numbers. We're going to keep coming to these meetings. We want answers. We pay this. We deserve to know. Thank you for your time.
Okay. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Paul DeGeest, and I live on 813 Dewsbury Lane. I've got this, I saw the New Prague Happenings Forum. I was motivated to come in, just see what was going on. I am kind of curious of a couple of things. First being on the bill I actually received in the mail. The billing address is to New Prague Utilities Commission. Also, there's a corporate seal on the document itself that says municipal utilities. What is this? Is it a municipal utility, or is it a for-profit or not-for-profit entity?
Mike, do you know?
We are a municipal utility that's owned by the city of New Prague.
Right.
We are a tax-exempt entity, so we are not a not-profit or a for-profit. We are a municipal governmental entity that owns and operates a utility for electric, water, wastewater, and stormwater.
Okay, so it is for-profit.
No, we are not a for-profit. We are a municipal government-owned municipal utility.
Okay, so we are not reporting profit on an annual basis?
We don't have a profit-centered operation similar to what you might see with a CenterPoint Energy or some other operational that we report our financials. We go through an annual auditing process that takes a look at revenues minus expenses and reports under the generally accepted accounting practices that all local governments are held accountable to.
You realize I'm here asking questions, and I feel like,
I'm trying to answer.
Okay,
We are
yeah, that's wonderful.
not a.
I don't want you to be offended by my questions.
I have a quick
curious
question
because
about nonprofit. Wouldn't a late fee be a profit?
No.
No. Oh, I just didn't know what do you consider profit?
Is there a way for the residents of the city to access what's coming in and what's going out of the utilities company?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's public information.
Great.
We go through an annual audit.
Wonderful. Okay, and where can that be obtained?
Through the finance department, Patty Solheiner, finance director, can do that.
I speak for myself, the utility bill is ridiculously high. I have a family of 5. My utility bill, regardless of what we do, is at least $220 a month. Big users. Also, I'd like to bring up the deposit. You know, we put a deposit down to gain access to those utilities. I guess I'm a little conflicted with the deposit because what happens is that the bill doesn't get paid on time. Not only is there a 20% interest fee added onto it as a late fee, but sure enough, there'll be somebody showing up within 10, 12 days to shut off my power. Seems a little counterintuitive when we're putting down, monies for deposit. So, it's the bill at this time is still secured. So I'm just wondering, maybe if that's something we should question on how we conduct business.
Well, there's 2 different things that are occurring with that. A deposit is made to, number 1, attempt to ensure payment, and that once under the New Prague Utilities Commission customer service policy, under the deposit situation, that if a customer has 24 consecutive months of payment on time, then that deposit is applied to their account.
Yes.
My research shows sort of that after 12 months.
Excuse me, I think we have somebody at the podium that's asking questions.
Sure.
I'm trying to answer those questions.
Sure. I
If you would like, the mayor will recognize you and allow you to come to the podium
Fair
to
enough.
ask further questions.
I'm familiar with the deposit system. I'm just suggesting that 10 days after the bill is due, if I've got somebody, driving around a V8 pickup truck to deliver late notices, and then, within 24 hours, the bill's not paid, the debt is still secured. And
Not necessarily.
well, if there's a deposit, the debt is still secured.
That's there
Right.
for the
Okay, so-
long term, that what is sent out is that when bills are due and owed,
Mhm.
that if they are not paid by that time, a 10% penalty is applied to the account, and a letter is sent to the property owner
Is it
or
10 or 20? I thought it
renter.
was 20%.
I believe it's 10.
It's 10%.
Is it 10?
It's 10%. There's a lot of miscommunication that appears to be existing out on New Prague.
Yeah, well, I don't know if it's miscommunication, but what I sense is the fact that the utility bill is very high. It's very expensive.
And one of the
It's very
things we've
expensive.
talked in the past, and that you have to take a look at that from, it covers water, electric, wastewater, stormwater, there's a garbage stream on there, is what's all included on that bill. A number of years ago, that probably one of the largest drivers of our utility bills is what exists on the sanitary sewer, the wastewater side of the billing that goes to homeowners. And I think that's probably the biggest area that we typically hear concerns on, that we can show you competitively where we're at with our utility rates, and the council looks at those annually when they look at establishing budgets for those operations. We try to provide information as to how we generally compare to some of our surrounding neighbors and what's happening there. A number of years ago, to answer your question about that side of it, is that when the city decided back before I arrived in 2008 that they were going to undertake the, construction of a new wastewater plant here in the city of New Prague. That facility that's out in the north end of town was about a $32 million project that was chosen to be implemented by the council. In fact, my first meeting back in July of 2008, the first night I took this position, the council was looking to awarding the bid on the construction of that project. So I've been here through the construction. As part of the construction of that facility and the financial obligation that goes with that, the council was required under the issuance of bonds to construct that facility to ensure that it had adequate resources to meet the debt obligations of building that facility. It was really originally undertaken as a 20-year project. Council ultimately extended that to 30 years, pretty much like the original loans that maybe you or I took out when we went to buy a house, that typically most starting homeowners programs generally end up with maybe a 30-year loan to start with. Anyway, in conjunction with building that, and I'm maybe going a roundabout way to try to answer your question, but in the long run, the biggest complaints or concerns we hear on the utility bill, besides it being too expensive, is the area associated with the wastewater side of that charge. The council, over a period of 2009, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14, that in order to increase the rates to get that at a level to be able to pay the debt payments on that facility, was required to increase our wastewater rates to the tune of about 148% over those 6 years.
Yeah.
Council undertook that.
Disposal was expensive, I noticed it on the bill.
That the wastewater is probably one of the higher pieces on the bill. But I'm trying to explain to you why it is at that level, and with the decision that was made to construct that facility to meet our long-term obligations in treating wastewater for this community, meeting the EPA and environmental standards, and the fact that we had an aging facility that existed at that time. So for those 3 reasons, the City Council chose to undertake the construction of that new major wastewater facility. It was a state-of-the-art facility, and the technology that it uses, all in an attempt to long-term, it's going to be around for probably the next 30 to 40 to 50 years.
It's more expensive than my cable bill. So you really have to find enjoyment in flushing.
I think you would regret that if you weren't able to flush that handle and it didn't get away, that you might not enjoy that aspect of owning a house. But
I think what Mike was trying to say is and again, this is, this council was not involved in those decisions at that time, but, and not skirting the issue, but when the council was looking at that issue, there was projections that the city was going to grow. And then we all know what happened in 2008, when the housing scandal came and housing stopped and all that stuff. And the city at that time was stuck with a very precarious situation in regards to, they had this debt obligation, they didn't have the growth potential, so they came up with this plan to, over 6 years, increase the cost. It's not anything we wanted to do. And then when I shortly became mayor, Mike and I did go to the PFA, who we had the loan with, and actually asked them to increase the term of the loan, which they were very nice to do. They did not have to do it. We were allowed to go from a 20 to a 30-year loan. And with that, we've been, I think, Mike, the last 5 years, we've stabilized the rates. We have not had a rate increase in the last 5 years.
Not quite 5, it would be 2015, 16,
17. And we're
next year will
looking,
be the 4th continuous year where we've not had to increase the rates because we got them to the level. We've had growth return here in recent years. We settled the Cedar Lake sanitary sewer issue, and so we've got some stability there where we've not had to increase those rates because they did go to a much higher level. But in doing that, we don't have the choice to reduce those or to go backwards because of that commitment that we've been undertaking to, one, replace an aged facility, one, to meet environmental standards, and third, to address the EP requirements as far as the disposal of waste and return to the streams.
yeah. So yes, you're not the first person who's told me, that it's very expensive, and we know it is, but we're hoping that as we can continue going forward and really monitor the rates and keep them very minimal, that within the next 10 years or so, we're going to be just as like anyone else. But it's something that really we had our hands tied because obviously the debt obligations had to be paid, and because the city was on the hook for that.
So we are a not-for-profit municipal utility company.
Well,
Are we going to go on the record? I'm just kind of curious. It's either we are reporting profits with our utility company or we're not, right?
we are not a profit-making business.
At the end of the year, like say over the last X amount of years, does anybody know if we're reporting? I mean, what are we doing with either we're ending up with a surplus or we're breaking even or we're ending up in the black? So I'm just curious.
If after annual operations, and we have been very successful in watching the financials and doing what's appropriate under what they call the general accepted accounting practices that govern how we report. And what we do is that we have revenues minus expenditures. We have been back in non-operating revenues, non-operating expenditures to get to a bottom line. Any of the funds at the end of the year, if we're on the positive side, stay within that fund and get used for operating and future operating expenses. If for any reason they are less than what's expected, we have capital replacement. We have certain debt service obligations that we're required to meet.
Excellent.
So the funds
So
stay
the money's
there.
being rolled back into municipal.
The money stays
Right.
within. That all of the utility operations, water, electric, sanitary, sewer, stormwater, are all what they consider business enterprise operations. And those funds only go forward based on what the operating revenues and charges are to the consumers or the users of that utility. And then it takes care of all of the operating expenses, all of the capital replacement, all of the debt service. So if there is any money left after taking care of those expenses, that money stays within that fund. If we don't have to, as the case of where we've got to in the wastewater fund, if we have taken in sufficient funds over what the operating expenses might be, then we're able to take a look at, do we need any kind of rate increase in the following years or not? Or we operate off what we take in plus the funds in the fund balance, so to speak, to move forward on an annualized basis.
I just have to add, the other thing too, learning about local government, and I applaud everybody who wants to learn about their bill and what really happens, because the levy is so much different than the enterprise funds as to what happens with the money and what we can do with the money. We are audited every year. They come and they present it, and it's actually public information. Does the library have one copy right now? Do we have it on our website? So
A copy of our annual audit,
Mhm.
that should be on the web.
Okay, and it talks about cash flow for those funds and how we can meet our debt. And so it shows it all has to be reasonable and within that area, but that's all open for public information too.
All right, I'll continue to watch that. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Hello, my name is Amy Melby, and I live at 207 Lady Slipper. And I don't think I have much to add, but I wanted to kind of, I guess I do have something to add, but talking about the points of, I live in a home that is barely 2,100 feet, or square feet. Half the time, I am the only person in that home, and I live with basically my thermostat at the lowest it can possibly be. I mean, basically it's never on. My furnace is never on, my AC is never on, because I do not want that $200 bill. I live in fear of my utility bill. I have lived in surrounding communities in much larger homes and paid roughly the same. I lived in a 3,700 square foot home in Lonsdale, and about $160 was our bill. I've actually asked around to people in other communities. I have a friend that lives in about a 3,900 square foot home over in Belle Plaine with 4 children and herself, and lights are always on, everything's kind of going crazy in that home, and she pays about $120. Now I understand that we have built a facility outside of town. I understand that we have to incur those costs. But it kind of comes down to what actually is reasonable. Again, I live in a home by myself most of the time, and that's pretty insane. One of the things that is a cause of concern, and I guess maybe for all I know it is available to me, but the service charges end up being about 25% of my bill each month. So when also looking at those in surrounding communities, from what I could tell, service charges were typically between 15 and 20% of bills. So kind of understanding or getting a better understanding of what those service charges are actually for. Because that I could not be home for the next 6 months, and I'm still gonna have a bill probably around $100. Because the service charges usually equal out to be about $50, give or take. So, you know, just basic leaving my power on so my refrigerator can run and what's gonna entail with there, that's kind of some cause of concern. And then there was talk just a few minutes ago of rate increases, and there actually was a rate increase on the electrical side this year. And the thing that I remember opening my bill and saying, whoa, it was February, and this was talking about rate increases that were happening in January. Unless I missed previous notices, I thought that was pretty odd. I actually, while sitting here, opened up and went through the utility website to find that it went out in, I received it in my February bill, and it talks about that the rate increase was for January 2017. So I thought that was ill-timed, and I don't know if there had been previous notices. In most cases of a municipality, notices for increases typically are well before it happens. So I don't know if there's anything to be said on that.
I don't know, Patty, is there anything that we can respond on that, the changes, if we have any, and yes, the electricity that we purchased, public power, from the Southern Minnesota Municipal Power Association. And so as we put our budgets together in October, November, and present them to the council for adoption in January, is accompanying that process through the budget workshops that we just set up here a few minutes ago. That's where we take the council through those processes and try to let them know what needs to happen. Typically, those rate increases are effective January 1, as you just described. Patty, that gets picked up for usage in January, that goes on the February bill that gets made out and is payable.
That's due in March.
And I was just going to say the last piece is that that then gets paid in March. So any of the adjustments that we make is that we make those on a calendar year basis because that's our annual budgeting and operations. And so as the utility general manager comes before the council and the budget workshops, and then ultimately at our final public hearings and the adoption in December, the council is taking a look at what, if any, rate increases are necessary to continue to support all of the budgetary operations of those utilities. In some cases, we may not have much in the way of local expenses as far as operating the electric utility, but we also, as a community, purchase power through the simple organization, and they charge us for the cost of electricity in the coming year.
And I think everyone understands that point. We have to purchase it. My concern was more so on the notice. If in December, that is something that the committee has done, one would believe that at least in the January bill, because this is something that the community is going to be incurring very quickly, it shouldn't necessarily be that I'm opening my mail and, oh, in this bill was the increase.
Okay, and if you can, from a timing standpoint,
Well, I think the reason, and this is one of the notices we do send out, this is probably what you're referring to. The reason that you don't get it until with your February bill is because that's when the increase occurred on your bill. So if we sent it earlier, you wouldn't see the base charge or the KWH on your bill to be reflective of the change until it hits the usage. So when you get your bill in January, it's actually for December usage. So we just try to send it out then in February to reflect your January usage. If that makes sense to you.
It makes sense in the theory of why it's now, but I guess I'm looking at it as a notice that your increase is coming. For those of us and most of the city, unfortunately, do not follow every meeting and do not know that you're going to have an increase. Yes, it probably happens every year, and maybe I've missed it every year that I've lived here. I guess my concern is that there isn't a prior.
generally, that's what historically has been done. Typically, the newspaper monitors the actions, just as if any of you weren't here tonight, is that they attempt to recap and put information out as to what we're doing. And they typically will pick up if there's going to be any budgetary changes in any utility operations. But short of coming to necessarily the budget workshops, coming to the budget adoption in December, you might not likely know that. Short of getting that notice that goes out, like she said, it's effective the first of the year. It's for January usage that gets picked up in February, mailed to you in March. So maybe there's more information that we can put out in our website, as you're describing, to try to provide some information there. But that's just in trying to answer your question, why the timing is what it is.
Can I, what would you like? Would you like a proposed notice? I'm just trying to figure out for the future what we can do to help, like a month.
You know, I do read the newsletter that comes with every time, and it's just a heads up. The proposal, you know, it was approved in December that as of January, your rate does increase. It's just a simple heads up. Yes.
In some cases, there might be certain residents that that's beneficial to and might be helpful. We did an explanation, Patty, how recent, that we sent out an example of trying to help understand the utility bill with explanations.
That was August.
Okay, it was August. We had residents of the city pay the example that we put in as an illustration to try to educate people. So the difficulty in trying to do something like that, and we're not saying that it can't be modified or changed of that nature, but different people read those inserts and information and take different actions. Where one had taken a look at that word, quite frankly, set an illustration or example or something on it to try to help read. Why somebody would pay a utility bill on that is beyond me, but therein lies the challenge of trying to communicate with the public and to provide any and all information so that everybody gets what they want out of that process. But there may be ways that we can do that as we look forward to what goes on in the budgetary process, is trying to use the newsletters that we do try to send out on a monthly basis. The challenge of doing that, Ken can answer that, is that to do 1 month's newsletter timing is we have that information put together.
We're about a month ahead.
So the difficulty is where we may not finish the discussions about what we're doing with any rate increases until in November, December. We would basically have to have, if that's going to come out in January, we'd have to know what the council's going to do no later than the first part of December to try to hit that timing. So sometimes it's just a timing aspect, and we do try to use that newsletter as a way of informing our city residents of what we're doing, what's happening. But you know, listening to your comments tonight, that there's possibly ways that we can take a look at that and maybe try to do something, or at least use our website differently to try to help provide some of that if you think that would be helpful.
My last point I want to make is my background is software and education, and educating fire personnel, municipalities, EMS, all those people on trends, and so they know how to go forward into their councils to get funding and so forth. So I am one of those people that likes to look at data. I like to look at what my previous usage was. And as everybody here needs to take time and sit down and go through the website, and you're going to find there's some extreme inconsistencies. Because I'm a nerd, I went through and made a spreadsheet of just my utilities. I moved into the home that I live in right now in July of 2015. So not until July of 2016 did I have a comparison to look back. But I can go through and look that July of 2015, my electric use was 607 kilowatts an hour. But on July 6th of 2016, when I look at my comparison, it tells me that last year I had 851. So it's all over the place. I can go through, and sometimes it's severely under, sometimes it's severely over. So what that ends up putting in my mind is, well, have I been overpaying? Because God knows I'm not underpaying. But when the website provides false data, it puts in that inconsistency, that belief of maybe I'm not paying what I should be paying. Like I said, I went through all the way back to July of 2015, and none of the comparisons were actual numbers from the previous years. And they should be, because it's telling me what I used. So somebody's data is wrong, and who's ever the data person, that is what I do for a living. I work on data, and when my data is wrong, I have to answer for it, and that is why I went through my report.
The only thing that I could offer to you would be to come in and meet with our
Oh,
finance
and
department,
certainly.
take a look at it, and we'd be more than happy to try to take a look at answering your question. And,
I just want the website to be correct.
If you have some information you're willing to provide us, we'd be more than happy to take a look at it. We just went through a major change on our website this year as far as the reformatting of it. We were also finding is that in some cases, we have not been very good at updating and maybe doing some of the things that you're talking about. And we're trying to, we have money in this next year's budget to try to do more work within some of the individual departments and areas to try to take a look at the data and the information that we're providing. We don't profess to sit here and tell you that we're absolute experts in that area. We have a good entity that we work with, but the data on the website is only as good as the data entry going into that as you were just describing to me. So if you have information that you find that you think is providing some inconsistencies, we would be very happy to take a look at that. If you would like to work with our finance department, they're able to run account information and do some data comparison to take a look at some of those issues to see if there's anything we can do to provide any helpful advice.
And I guess my point for that is if I'm going to put plastic on my 11-year-old windows to hopefully have a better winter, I can't look and see what last year and see if I had any improvements if the website is not.
It's very difficult to answer the question when you take our utility bill and try to compare it in another community.
No, and I'm just saying in this house I've been in for 2 years, like I can't look at 2 years of data and tell what I need to do to have a lower bill because it's not consistent. That's my worry. I'm probably not the only one, or maybe I am the only one.
Are you being billed on this faulty data?
I don't know. That's my thing, is I don't know if I'm being billed fault. I can't say for sure. It's just when I'm looking at comparison data that is 200 kilowatts per hour off, how am I supposed to wonder or not wonder? And it is my job now I did this last week and prepare for tonight, so I was informed. But it's kind of, whoa, scary.
But it's very difficult to answer your question sitting here without having the same information that you have or looking at our accounts to try to do a comparison to see what is occurring.
Okay.
And our staff is certainly willing to sit down and try to take a look at that and answer those questions with you if you'd like to make an appointment with the finance director.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a quick question on those bills. I know that on my CenterPoint Energy and then at least Chuck and I have MDEC, not and my bill's close to $200 just my electric bill. Through MVEC, but the CenterPoint puts a comparison on a month-to-month basis what the weather was like. Obviously, in July, that in 2016, the average temperature could be 80. That's going to make your, air conditioner run that much more, and the following year it could be 74, the average temperature. So you can compare those two. Is there a way that we could put that on there to make sure that? I think that's legitimate. When they look year to year and see that their January bills are different, or their July bills from the previous year are different by as much as 20 or 30%. It could be weather related.
I can't answer that tonight unless Patty has an answer under what the software is capable of doing that way, but I can't answer that for you tonight, John.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Jeff Hammond. I live at 1311 3rd Street Northeast. Yeah, my electric bill and water bill are absolutely outrageous. I would love to have your bills. I have a 3,700 square foot house, a wife and 2 kids. Yeah, my 2 kids leave lights on. But my last bill was over $500. $500 for 1 month. That's criminal. This year is my mother's last bill. God rest her soul, she died April 20th, but the last bill when the house was completely empty, nobody living in there, water usage, previous meter reading was 1,067, present reading was 1,068, and I guess that's in thousands, or, you know, could you add a couple zeros onto it? So there's 100-gallon usage. Yeah, I got charged 39 cents, which is great. The sewer was charged for 700 gallons. Why, if 100 gallons is coming out of the faucet, going down the drain, are you charged for $700, 700 gallons going down the drain?
What month was this, sir? What month was that?
April?
This was, the due date was 8/15/2017.
That sewer usage would have been calculated on the prior usage for November, December, January. That gets then used for the billing for sewer for the following year.
To me, that's absolutely ridiculous. If 100 gallons is coming out of a faucet, how can you charge for 700 gallons going down the drain? That is wrong.
It's robbery.
It is robbery.
That's robbery. That's illegal.
You have two choices in the billing system that cities take a look at. You can have two choices. One is that you base it on some number of months in the winter season, which typically is the lowest water usage in most residential houses. In
So
our
you're not really
case,
being charged for what?
excuse me,
Sam.
we are trying to answer this gentleman's questions, and I'm trying to answer what the billing practice is that the council has previously debated and what has historically been in place for a number of years. It used to be calculated on a 5-month cycle during the winter season. Patty, and that used to be,
November, December, January, February, March.
so there were 5 months. A number of years ago, we changed that to November, December, January, based on what that average water use was in kind of the off-peak season. The alternative to that, and that's what the sewer bill was then for the whole following year until that new cycle came up with what the water usage was for that time period. The alternative is to bill residents based on actually what the water is that they use. The reason historically that the city selected the practice that is currently in play is the alternative where you bill on usage would also account in the billing that you would pay sewer on based on your watering of your lawn, of your gardens, the filling of a swimming pool, would all be water usage that someone would pay sewer usage on, which in those cases isn't all going down the drain, so to speak. And so in the selection of those alternatives, and again, that predated my arrival, but we have debated, which of the two is a better option, is simply basing it on what water is used, so that the two correspond. But then in there then is that if your mother had watered a garden, had watered a lawn, and she maybe didn't do that, or not in other cases, then people will be paying a sewer bill based on that actual water consumption. So there's pros and cons under either of those two alternatives, and the city has historically taken the water usage in the winter months, which typically is the lowest time of the year to conduct or to take a look at that analysis.
I can understand that.
So that's why when you
Now-
take a look at the billing is that.
But if you were going to charge it for the actual usage, would it still have to be 4 times the price for sewer than what water is?
In the alternatives,
It's
and
$3.89 per 1,000 gallons for water and $15.55 per 1,000 gallons for sewer. Is there really 4 times the cost?
There is the base charge that we have, and then there's also the rate per 1,000 gallons that are used in that process. As you heard me answer I don't know if it was the second gentleman who was up at the podium, is that during the time period 2009 through 2014, the city had to increase its wastewater rates, which included both the base rate and the rate per 1,000, that went up about 148%. And I don't mean to dwell on that, but that was what was necessary to be able to support the debt service for the construction of the new wastewater treatment plant. As we said, as we've gotten to a level by those actions, that now for 2015, 2016, 2017, there's been no rate increase, And as we will be presenting the budget information to the council probably the end of October or at that first meeting in November, as I look out, trying to use my best crystal ball with what's happening with the return of the growth and the payments that's coming from the new construction that has occurred and the settlement of our Manor sanitary sewer, is that the funds that come from what has to be paid by somebody new moving in on a capital charge for the construction of a house or that other matter, I've not seen any reasonable needs to increase rates looking out probably into the early 2020s if my crystal ball and nothing major changes from what we're attempting to forecast. So while it took 6 years to get it to a certain level, we're hoping we're going to be able to maintain and plateau for a period of time. Well, as the mayor mentioned earlier, there are others that aren't part of our situation. We had to build and own and operate our own wastewater plant. Everybody to the north of us is part of the Met Council sanitary sewer district. So the ability is to provide sewer services dictated not locally, but through the Met Council process, in addition whatever they have to construct to operate the sewer trunk lines and those kind of things. So
Everybody knows the Met Council is just robbing everybody anyway.
and that's another point of discussion, but I was trying to answer, as you take a look at that, your mother's rates were based on her usage from November, December, and January that would continue in place until we saw new readings. And so even though she didn't use any water, and you saw billing, is that billing was reflective, I believe, Patty, if I'm answering it correctly, of that water usage that occurred during that time frame.
And we do check with other cities, and other cities do it both ways. You know, one way is the actual, and the other way is using an average type deal. So there really is no right way or wrong way. It's all dependent on the cities, you know, because most of our rates and things that we look at every year, we do look at our surrounding communities, you know, where we sit on our water rates and our sewer rates and things like that. So it's not like we're trying to, you know, we don't live in a bubble. We do try to figure out, you know, what we're competing against, you know, especially electric rates. Half the city, like Sean and I, we're an MVEC. So obviously we see what they're charging us and we see what the city's charging. They got to be compatible because obviously, you know, they're servicing basically people across the street from each other. So we do comparisons every month or every year when we do our budget process. So we're really in tune to what's going on in the area. You know, you may not think so, but we do look at comparisons, you know, to make sure that our rates are in line with surrounding communities. Yeah, some communities have lower sewer rates, some have higher water rates. I mean, it's all over the board, but we try to look at that and make sure that we are in line. So it's part of the process.
One thing, you know, and I know other council members know, I've always wanted to bill per what you use is what you pay. But also considering that is then people would need irrigation meters in the summer, and that would have to be a permit. It would have extra cost to it. Plus, if you accidentally leave your watering hose on overnight, it can be 25 to 50,000 gallons just for one night that then you'd be paying sewer charges on. So it is a hard decision and a hard thing to look at what's.
I can understand it. The whole November, December, January average explains why my mom got I don't know if she got a call, a letter, or an actual visit from somebody in Newport Utilities at the beginning of 2016 saying that she was not using enough electricity and water. She happened to be up in Hendrum, Minnesota, taking care of my grandson and helping out my sister-in-law as my brother was in coma. So she was not even in town. Nobody was there, nobody was using electricity, nobody was using water. But she got a visit or a call or a letter from the New Prague Utilities stating she was not using enough.
That doesn't even sound right to me.
It doesn't sound right, but that's what she said.
Okay.
And
I would find that
it sounds
unlikely.
absolutely-
Typically, the only reason we would send out a letter or a notice to somebody is if in the monitoring of the water usage typically, if something seems abnormally
Well,
wrong.
if she's not there, she's not using any water. And during November, December, and January, she was gone for October, December, November, and December. All 3 of those months she was gone. She came back in the middle of January. So during those months of monitoring, she was not using any. Her average was way too low.
But without
So
seeing
there
that
was
or
a
trying to,
problem.
without being able to see that, I really can't comment a whole lot on that. But,
Well, that's-
that sounds extremely unusual.
The only other thing I can think of is they could have, may have thought that their meter stopped. And that's why they wanted to, contact her just to check that out.
It's possible.
Yeah. That's,
But November, December, not being there, not using anything, kind of get a call from the New Prague Utilities.
Okay?
Kind of scary.
I just have a quick question. Why is it that there's new
Go up
Prague
to the podium.
utilities and then?
Yeah, please. You want to be on TV, don't you?
No.
Well, you are now. You're a star.
My name is Tyrone Tupi. I live at 806 First Avenue Southeast. I was just wondering why there's new Prague utilities and Minnesota Valley Electric. Why in the same city?
Well, there's territories. Mike, we
The
can,
attempt to try to answer that is that, as the mayor indicated, there are certain territories that the service for the MVEC co-op works in, and there is the area that we as a city of New Prague have territorial rights for. About 25 years ago, the city and the co-op negotiated an agreement that took a look at who was going to be able to service what certain territories. That 20-year agreement that was entered into, like I said, at least 25 years ago, and it expired several years ago, resulted in a territorial area that the city grew into that I don't think anybody knew or anticipated at the time that that original agreement was put together. So it gave the service for the MVC co-op the right to service territory. And as the city grew and expanded because of all the growth and the development in the early to mid-2000s, more on the easterly side of the city of New Prague, and there are others that I'd have to kind of show you what the map looks like, but they were entitled to service territory that existed within the city limits because of that agreement. We're in the process of talking with MVEC, trying to determine how we replace that agreement and where we go with that agreement, and what might likely happen as we look at areas of growth outside and around the city that neither they serve right now because there's nothing there, it's all farm field, and which is not in our territory, and so we're trying to determine how can we jointly agree on a service territorial issue in a new agreement with them. So nothing's been resolved. We're in early discussions, trying to take a look at how that might happen. The second part of that is having discussions. Is there a way for us to be able to negotiate an agreement where we could reacquire that territory that's being serviced by MVEC in the city limits and have us take over that territory for the long term? Again, that agreement, the discussion is in the process with our utilities and MVEC, trying to see if there's ultimately any workable way that can occur. But it's kind of unusual that you have a co-op servicing territory inside the city, but when they did that original agreement, nobody anticipated the level and the amount of growth that occurred in the early to mid-2000s.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Cassie. I live at 606 2nd Street Northwest, formerly of 904 Horizon Drive Southeast, and I've had both MVEC and now I have New Prague Utilities. When I lived at 904, my utility bill never exceeded $100 a month, not once. I was on the plan or whatever through like MVEC and CenterPoint Energy. So my two bills combined never exceeded $100 a month. I've now been at my 606 2nd Street Northwest residence for, I think, 2 years or a little bit longer. And my bill for last September was $181. And for this September, it was $140. I work from home now. I have been for the past 3 months about. Before that, 6 months ago, I was never at my residence. I worked 3 jobs, so I was never home. Lights were always off. Kids were with me part of the time, which they always have been, 50-50 custody between me and their father. I have a friend who lives by me on that side of town on the west end, and his residence is located approximately a quarter mile from my place, and he has MVC. That doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. I don't understand how me at my residence has New Prague Utilities and he has MVC. He has a unit plugged into his wall that tells him his daily usage, and last reported it was $1.88 per day. So my lights are always off. I do work from home, so my office is upstairs. When my home office is set up, I have lights off all over the house. And now, to conserve water, we have adopted the method of if it's yellow, let it mellow, and if it's brown, flush it down. I've also asked my children to do this as well. My kids take 5-minute showers. They're boys, stinky, but they shower quick. My showers are about 10 minutes. We don't have a sprinkler. I live in a townhome. We don't have a sprinkler. We don't have a pool. I never use the hose because I don't have to. So I just feel as though my usage is excessive for the size of my townhome A and the amount of time that we spend in it. If I'm working, I'm working. If I'm not working, I'm not at my house. My kids are in sports. They're very busy. I have a horse, so I spend a lot of time out there. And I do a lot of chaperoning and carting around of my children and their friends. So I just feel as though what I'm paying seems excessive in accordance to my usage as I know daily when I'm home. And I still don't understand the NPC thing and the New Prague Utilities thing based off of the residence of where I live and where my friend lives.
Well, again, that's a territory issue that, as Mike said, that was an agreement that was set up, and it's uncommon, but it is, these co-ops are very protective of their territory because obviously it's a revenue stream for them. Mike did say we are trying to negotiate, trying to at least get proper New Prague under all the New Prague utilities, but it's not as easy as you would think because obviously that's a revenue stream for them, and they put in infrastructure and that whole thing, but we'd like to get that under one wing also.
I've also been set up on ACH payments for the past year and a couple months now. I think I enrolled in the online billing September of last year. And my bill does not come in my name because it's in my landlord's name because I rent. So the bill is in his name, in his address. I do pay it, but the payments come out of my checking account automatically every month. I don't even get a bill mailed to me. I've never had it mailed, not once.
If I can respond to that right away, is that the bill under Minnesota data privacy, that if the billing is in the name of your landlord, who is the owner of the townhome, then only he can see that information. We're not allowed under the law to provide you as a renter a copy of that bill. He has you obviously taking care of that and paying for that with all the deductions and that, and he would need to be the one that would provide you with a copy of that bill because your name is not technically on the utility account, and under the Minnesota Data Privacy Act, we're not allowed to share that data with you.
So is that just a New Prague Utilities rule, or is that across the board? Because I had my NBC bill mailed to me, and my CenterPoint Energy bill mailed to me when I was renting at 904 Horizon.
What was the account name on it?
Mine.
Yeah, so you set up the account. Here, he has the account set up.
In his name.
I understand.
So he would have to do something with you to allow your name to be on the account for you to receive a copy of that. Because just like...
Yeah, he added me as an authorized user of the account.
Just recently?
No, it's been that way for a while.
But is your name on the account?
No, his name is on it. Because his name is on the bill. Yeah.
That would be the stumbling block. Unless your name is on the utility bill or the account, you would not receive any bill.
Well, I receive it on my phone. electronically.
From him?
No, from New Prague Utilities.
So you get a,
I get an electronic copy of my bill every month.
okay, but not a hard copy.
No, but it's electronic. And it has all the data on it, my usage, everything. So I know what I'm paying for.
Okay?
You know, I would like to know what I'm paying for. Like, why is my $140 a month getting charged $140 a month? Or $135, or $123, or $181? It varies a lot.
Patty, do you have any thoughts or?
No, I'd like to look at your account, Cassie, and maybe I can talk to you and we can figure out what's going on with that.
Yeah, I just think it varies too much.
Yeah.
Like, there's too much variance in what I'm paying, so it just seems really inconsistent, that's all.
Okay. If we can just look at the account together and kind of walk through it, maybe we can figure out.
Because I'm very conscious of, like, lights being on, water, all of that. Like, I'm very conscientious of, like, where my money goes. I'm kind of a weirdo when it comes to my finances. My background is insurance, so I do it all day. I look at people's policies, I compare their renewals to what they're paying now. I'm constantly comparing numbers all day long. That's all I do. Computer on the phone all day. So that's what my background is.
Okay.
And sales.
Well, hopefully, if you get a hold of Patty, she'll help you.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you.
Yep.
Anything else?
No.
Okay.
I think that's all.
Anyone else? Okay, well, I want to thank everyone for the input. I think it was very, very good. It's always good to hear feedback. Hopefully, some of these issues can get resolved. And Mike?
Mayor, I'd like to offer is that in any of the discussion that goes on at any time, we find this to be quite consistent. If anybody has an issue, a concern, a problem with the bill or something of that nature, please pick up the phone and give us a call. We're always willing to make time to sit down and take a look at it to help understand what may be occurring, what's happening. But if we don't know about the situation, we can't respond.
I have one more comment, I'm sorry. I've called and I've asked to be on the budget plan because my payments have been consistent, at least over the 12 months for sure, because it's ACH on my account. I've never had an RBI, nothing like that, and I was told no.
Do we even have a budget plan?
We do.
Oh, we do. I don't even know. I'm on MVEC.
We have to have a 12-month history.
I do.
On
I've
your
more than 12
account,
months. Yeah.
How
So I've
do
been
we
on
push to get rid of basic service charges on our bill?
What do you mean basic service
Well,
charges?
just the basic service charges.
Well, there are base, are you referring, Patty, is he asking about the
base
base charges? The base charges is an amount that's applied to all utility accounts for a base level of service, and there's a fixed rate for that, and that rate changes potentially every year by some slight amount or something. And then there's a rate charge on the usage that goes along with that. So no, there is no way to get rid of it.
How would we as a city push to get rid of basic service charges?
You really can't. That it's a design in most utilities, whether it be water, wastewater, electric, there is a base charge that goes on most utility accounts to help generate certain dollars to operate the utility.
Yeah, I understand this.
And then it's supplemented with the variable charge, which is the volume of usage for either water, sewer, or electricity. So it's fairly standard and fairly common.
Basically paying them to do business with us.
Well, what you're paying
Them to
for,
take money.
what you're paying is for a service level that it costs certain dollars to manage and operate the utility year in and year out.
Well, it could be argued that that money is our sewer, our water, and our electricity. We're paying a premium for those three things.
Well, you're paying the costs to provide that service, and until you know precisely, and we'd be happy to sit down and talk about it, as to what it entails to provide that service. In the case of water, we have multiple treatment plants, we have multiple water towers, we have a distribution system, which is all of the water mains, to get water to the houses. And to take care of all of that is we have certain personnel costs and benefits, we have certain operating costs.
Aren't those covered through those expenses, though, of those three things that you deliver?
No, not necessarily.
Okay.
Really,
So
the
basically
basic-
wages and operating costs are being paid through those service charges? alone?
Well, mostly the infrastructure is being charged for the basic charge. So you charge a house the same, every house gets the same thing. So you really have a base charge is really kind of like a universal charge that goes to each someone using the service. And that's for, you know, the meters and all that stuff to run the water into your deal. And then the other charge is actually the charge for usage. So there is basically two other charges. I mean, I'm sure you could probably combine it all, but you'd be paying for it any way you look at it.
Can a sub-meter be installed to record our disposal?
Sewer meter.
Sewer meter. I'm just trying to, I mean, the common theme here is we're all paying way too much for our utilities. So how can we, as people, get our utility bills down collectively?
It's going to come out of your other hand. I mean, either it's going to come out of the operating levy that we tax you at, or it's going to be billed as sewer charges. If we take away, I can take away your sewer charges tonight, or if I.
Well, I'm not asking for my sewer charge to be taken away.
Well, your base charge. Let's say your base
If I'm not
charge.
actually paying for disposal on something, isn't there a way to record that I'm not paying I'm not disposing of it, so I don't have to pay for it?
I'm not following your question. You are-
Well, he wants a meter on what goes down in the sewer system.
Or shouldn't there be a way to record how much?
Okay, well then, the fact is though, is that the meter cost is there's gonna be a cost involved with
Okay.
that, is there not? So now we have to go to
Can
all
we
the
discuss
houses
as a
and
community what that
The
costs?
thing is, the bottom line is we have a $30 million plant that we needed to put in based on growth projections and had to build it to a certain standard that the state was gonna require. Now, we don't have to have any base charges or anything else, but then you're gonna pay it on your taxes. It's still our property, we have to make the bill. We just split it up on either one.
So the justification for paying for disposal, that we're not actually disposing of the water, even though we're paying for it, is because we have this big bill, we've welcomed this project into our community, so everybody's gonna pay for it, whether it be legitimate or not.
It is legitimate.
Well, if
We
it's
owe
not
the
going down
money.
the sewer pipe and it's being dispersed in my yard, I'm not paying disposal on it.
You're
not paying disposal.
not paying for any sewage disposal fee on the water that is really going on the garden or used during the summer months, spring months, the summer.
But you just told the gentleman over here that it
You can
was.
come up here in a minute.
Okay, then I
I'm
was
trying to answer your question.
That's what it
If you
sounds
take a
like.
look at the calculation of what you're paying for sewer, is you can generally assume is that it is based on the water that is going, that you're using from a water standpoint, that when you look at where it goes down the drain, where it goes down the toilet, we try to take a look at what that average water usage is in the months of, like I said, November, December, January. In the other months, you're going to, if you were paying sewer based on what your actual water usage was, unless you installed a meter to record separately what's going down the drain from the interior water meter, then you would have to install, as they said earlier, a secondary water meter that would measure what you spread on the lawn, for lawn sprinkling, for watering the garden, because you're not paying for any of that sewer use in those other months, because your sewer usage is based on your November, December, January water use.
Understand, I'm not trying to be bad, I'm just trying to figure something out.
And
like,
there is no easy way to install a meter on a waste stream leaving a household because of the elements and items that go down that drain. And it's anything from human waste to other items that we may not want to talk about, but you'd be surprised at the number of things that get flushed down the toilet that we end up receiving at the wastewater plant.
Real turnstile and.
We have just what you described. We have a bar screen at the wastewater plant that on all the waste coming in from the community, it cleans out all of those larger objects and items that really shouldn't be treated from a wastewater standpoint. But you're paying your wastewater bill on the least amount of water usage in those 3 months versus if we were basing it on actually what your water usage was every single month. Unless you install a separate meter, as we've talked about, to try to measure that water that you're just using on your lawn or filling a pool or those kinds of things.
So when is the wastewater treatment plant going to be paid for?
30 years. 30 more years.
30 years from what date?
2038 is, but in taking a look at that, as we're dealing with right now. If you watch what's going on in all the discussion with the environmental side of it, is I'm seeing standards and issues that we may be confronted with long term that are ever changing every single year from the federal government and the state government that come down to us about how clean we have to restore our waters to go out in the streams and the rivers, throughout the state of Minnesota. So while we are currently treating and had to build a plant to meet certain standards, those wastewater standards are ever evolving and changing. And if you ask me what they're going to be between now, 2017 and 2038, I don't think I can give you a good answer on when some of those changes are going to come in that may require us to add additional components to the plant or treat the waste to different standards than what we're currently treating it to. And that's just a continuous evolving process coming out of the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency.
There may be a new plant.
I'll be done.
No, I think in all honesty is that the future forward-looking decision-making the council made, as the mayor alluded to, was built to accommodate probably larger growth than what has occurred. However, we've seen that growth return here in 2016 and 2017, and part of the reason that, as I said earlier, that I don't think we're going to see wastewater rate increases going forward until possibly into the early to mid-2020s is because that growth has returned and we resolved the Cedar Lake situation. So while we had to get them to a certain level, they're not going to go up and down in the process. That you wouldn't want me to put you on a yo-yo, at least with where they're at, you know where you're at, and looking ahead as we think because of the things that I'm talking about here, we're going to be able to maintain those at a certain level. But that major jump in those 6 years was extremely expensive to all of our city residents.
Well, one last thing, really quick, as Mr. Ryan had said, that you guys have a banknote that's due every month for this $30 million plan. Now, over half the residents in New Prague can agree that they are being charged way too much for their utilities, outrageous amounts, almost double than what normal utilities billing is. In other communities, what would happen if, say, 5,000 people refused to pay their bill?
There'd be a lot of 5,000 people not real happy.
Well, I mean, electricity is not that big of a deal to a lot of people, especially if we have generators and solar panels. So I ask you guys again, if this city decided to stand up and say, this month, we don't pay the bill, where does that leave you? We're not asking where it leaves us. We would have already made that decision ourselves to be lightless. We're asking the city, what would the city do if they didn't have all of their puppets to pay for this?
Ultimately, it would go on your tax statement for whatever.
Oh, that's because I'm a
charges.
renter, so that doesn't bother me.
Well, it would when your landlord says, sorry, you're out of here.
Yeah, but he'd probably stand up with me too as a property owner in this town, so I would do it legitimately and legally. As a matter of fact, what if everybody went and paid an escrow for their bill? Because we could do that. We could all go open escrow funds and not pay you guys to pay the courthouse until this was sorted out in the federal court of law. And then I'm just asking, what's your contingency plan if the city revolted today and said, we're not paying this anymore? What's your contingency plan?
We have reserves.
We have reserves from the nonprofit organization that you're running? These are all legitimate questions.
Then they're not.
Yeah, they are.
You own the plant. You're just.
We own the plant, so we should have a say in what we pay.
And you know what? You want to default on the loan and ruin our credit rating. You're only going to pay higher taxes when we go.
I don't think we would. I think these people would move out of this community. I think they take their businesses and leave.
Everything else.
I think they take their residences and
You didn't
leave.
have this discussion with you. You're so out there.
I'm out there.
Oh,
I
it's just
listened for
crazy.
2 hours. This dude run around in circles and barely
There's
making
no
sense.
circles. We just answered the question. You don't like what you heard.
No,
Like I said,
I don't like the fact that she, as dad, is substantially proving the fact that you guys are running a crooked show over here, and nobody can answer to that.
It's crooked show. It's going into your checking account. It's going into all
It's
of
going
our
into my checking account? I highly doubt that, sir. Anyhow,
It's
I mean,
paying the bills
it's
for
not going to
this
stop
city.
here. This is going to be a headache every
Well, you know,
single
I at least can
week.
say that I get audited. The city gets audited every year.
Good.
Do you get audited every year?
Yes, I do, actually. I run a business. Thank you very much.
No, do you get audited?
I have been audited.
Yeah, not every year, do you?
No, I don't.
Okay, that's all I want to know.
But I run my business pretty tight, and I don't rip off my customers either.
Why don't you come sit in on our budget meeting?
I'm going to start sitting in on every
You can
meeting.
go line by line with us.
I'm going to sit in on every meeting from here on out, and we're going to have more and more people sitting here and voicing their
Then you can come
opinion.
up and tell us where we can change it.
I'm glad to.
Come up with the idea and run it by us and we'll.
I will glad, if you would take me
We'll figure it
seriously,
out.
I will do the math and the time and the homework to
Thank
do it.
you. You saw it, 6 o'clock on the 9th and on the 30th. I'll see you right here. You can go through the line by line item with the budget. It's online. We'll get you a copy.
Actually, give me a copy, mail it to my address that was stated earlier.
You figure it out.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm willing to do it. for
I just see
all
that
the
you're very
constituents.
upset when I asked if what would happen if the people wouldn't pay their bills in this community. It's kind of funny.
Well, I don't see
To
that
you getting
happen. I
upset.
see 20 of you doing it, and we turn off the water, and we turn off the
Yeah, I
electricity.
could see that tonight there's
And then
20 of
we
us, and next
reserve,
week there'll be
and then you
40 of
force
us. This is
people to pay for
recorded.
that stuff.
We're getting this
It's
out
as simple as
there.
that.
We're done. Your citizens are done. They're done.
Really?
I think you should start to realize that, sir.
Okay. Yeah, I don't like paying the bill either, but I can either raise your property taxes to pay the $30 million for the plant and take away your base charges.
You
So you
can.
can have a $60
I thought that was a
water
political
bill,
thing.
and you can be happy, but you're gonna have a $200 and $400 increase.
I'm not
on
even
your
really
property
complaining
tax.
about my bill,
It
because you
doesn't
guys
matter.
will listen to me. I
It's
just
all
don't get
coming
mine
out of
mailed to me, so I have to
our
pay
pockets
a
to pay the $30
thing. I'm
million
just
thing.
concerned about everybody else, like the lady that was in tears tonight. Oh, and she wasn't, that's right.
Oh, you know what? She was in tears. How would she be in tears when her property taxes go up to pay for the $30 million plant? Because we all have to pay it. Either out of this pocket or this pocket. There's no difference. It has to get paid.
We pay more than Eden Prairie pays, sir.
I don't care what Eden Prairie has. This is our bill because we had to build a $30 million plant
Your
based
bill.
on our gross.
Your bill.
Well, Eden Prairie also has a population a little bit larger.
Your
and a lot
population
more-
would grow higher. I wish you guys would read the comments that
And
are
more
happening about your
businesses.
city. There are people that are afraid to move here because of this situation. There are people that are afraid to bring their businesses here because of this situation. I wish you guys would get out of behind the desk and see what's going on in your community.
Are you kidding me? I'm out all the time. What are you talking about?
Are you reading what people are saying about your community
What?
and hearing what
I
outsiders
read what the
are saying?
same 30 people are
That's
reading all the
important.
time, and.
I meet 500 new
forth.
people a week in this community
I'm not
that are right
arguing
there. I
that.
get it.
I'll
Okay.
see you- I'll see
Well,
you
Jason, you wanna-
30,
hold
I'll
on.
see you
See me
figure it out.
every
Okay, hold
council meeting there
it.
is.
That's it. Enough out of you, enough out of you. Jason, go ahead. You have this tape right there.
Oh, Jason, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Oh, no problem. Jason Burma, 1302 North, 4th Street Northwest. Three things. I'm also a Minnesota Valley Electric customer, but I can say that every time there's a storm, the power goes out, so I wish I was in Prague, but I don't want the price. Two, I would like to see a little more respect, especially on you, Sean. Just saying, I'm just saying, I'm a renter, I didn't know if you knew that.
Yeah, no, I didn't know that,
I'm telling you
Jason.
now.
We've had this conversation before, haven't we,
Yeah,
on that- on the
and
EDA
you
board?
want those type of people in your community, is what you told me.
Absolutely, and I said, well, what we have.
And I'm one of them.
What we, I'm
Amen.
glad to know.
Anyways, that's beside the point. I'm just, what happened here, it's his own fault, but I want to see some more respect on you.
I'm
being city council.
perfect, well, you should
Sean.
go ahead and break me
Anyway,
off.
anyway. And then another issue I guess I have is when we do call the city, myself included, and in all respect to you, Mike, misrepresented the people on Facebook, but when we do call the city, we do call the office and we complain about our sewer. My bill is $20 for water, but my sewer bill is $90. So I don't have your expensive bills, which is weird. And I have a family of 5. So, it's kind of strange. But anyways, we get the same runaround. So it's, get upset and I don't want to talk to you right now. So, just like to see more respect.
Well,
Okay, thank you.
But, you know, you and I.
Sean, no.
There's no reason to, Sean.
Done.
None.
We're all done. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for, I know it's been a long night. Appreciate everyone coming. If there's nothing else, I'm going to make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
You got a second by Maggie Bass. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposition? We're out of here. Thank you, everyone.